There is a thought that is not born of fear, lack, or time, a thought that knows no limits, recognizes no obstacles, and accepts no impossibilities. It is the thought of the Most High, and when that thought awakens within you, your entire life begins to obey a higher law. This text is not merely a collection of spiritual ideas, it is an inner activation manual, a direct path to the unlimited spiritual power that has always dwelled within your consciousness. Based on the elevated vision of Emmet Fox, here you will discover that you were not meant merely to survive, but to create, heal, rise, and manifest from the divine mind. Every word you will hear is a spark of eternity, a force that breaks the chains of doubt, dissolves the boundaries of fear, and reminds your soul of who you truly are. For when you think with the thought of the Most High, lower laws give way to the laws of the Spirit. You are not here by chance. This teaching arrives when your consciousness is ready to abandon old limits and enter a dimension of power, clarity, and purpose that has always been reserved for you. Prepare to elevate your mind. Prepare to rewrite your destiny. Prepare to remember your true nature. Welcome to the thought of the Most High. Here begins your access to unlimited spiritual power. You are God, says the psalmist. With these two words, the Spirit lifts the veil and reveals the root of all human power. The Bible is not a chronicle of distant events. It is a portrait of the mind, whether it thinks in God or apart from God. When Jesus repeats this verse before the Pharisees, he confirms a fundamental truth forever. Divine creation is not the privilege of a few, but the inner law of every creature. New thought revives that spark and transforms it into method. We have learned that prayer is not supplication, but affirmation, that the visible reality obeys the invisible model, and that when a man accepts his status as a child, he receives the key that opens every door. This book develops that spiritual science step by step. I do not seek to persuade you with theories, but to lead you to practice. Each chapter is a tool. Use it today, use it now, and your inner omnipotence will respond, based on the teachings of Emmet Fox. We have noticed that more than 80% of those who visit our channel are not subscribed. You can support this project by pressing the subscribe button and liking the video. Thank you for inspiring us to continue creating more and better content for you. Are you ready to transform your life? Chapter 1. You are God's, your potential revealed. We begin with a clear affirmation. You are an individual expression of the infinite principle. All Scripture revolves around this fact. When the psalmist declares, I said, you are God's and all of you are children of the Most High. Psalm 82:6. He is not praising a spiritual aristocracy. He is pointing to the very design of creation. God can only produce in his likeness. Therefore, every human being, even in ignorance, contains the seed of omnipotence. Observe the child building sandcastles. While imagining, he reigns. If the waves destroy his work, he does not cry for long, he simply rebuilds. Why? Because in his mind, the idea precedes the form. Adults forget this law and become enslaved by appearances. To become like children again, Jesus taught, is to recover creative and free consciousness. Genesis allegorically describes the same principle. Let us make man in our image. The word image implies idea, model, resemblance, indicating function, operative power. The Edenic drama that follows does not narrate the fall of a perfect being, but the misplacement of attention. Eating from the tree of appearances, knowing good and evil as absolutes, is allowing a dualistic mind to replace God's singular vision. From then on, man works by the sweat of his brow. That is, he struggles against a world he himself projects, unknowingly. New thought restores order, changes the cause and changes the effect. When you understand your divine filiation, you stop begging for external solutions and begin to exercise inner dominion. You do not suppress matter, you redeem it, showing it its true place as symbol, not master. Objections and the parable of the beggar. Many object, I feel weak, guilty, limited, how can I claim I am God?
And now
I respond with the parable of the beggar and the inheritance. A man, ignorant of his lineage, lived on alms. Upon death, he learns he is heir to vast lands. The news does not create the inheritance, it reveals it. Likewise, truth does not make you a child of God. It informs you of what you already are. Your task is to accept it, even if sensory reason protests. Acceptance does not mean vanity. It means recognizing that the power that formed galaxies dwells in your consciousness as a present law. Hence Jesus says, "The Father who dwells in me does the works." The principle is clear. God is the only cause, man the only channel. When the channel aligns, the impossible recedes. 3 practical consequences. 1. Authority over thought. If you are a child of the Most High, your mind cannot be a dumping ground for fear or resentment. Every idea is a seed. Every emotion, rain that makes it germinate. Watch your sowing. 2. Elevated self-concept. You are not a product of chance or a victim of inherited temperament. You are the center of divine expression. Elevate your self-concept and your outer world will reorganize to reflect it. 3. Creative responsibility. The title of child implies service. Knowing that your thoughts influence the collective, you consciously choose the good. Isolation is impossible in a unified mind. Seeing your divinity. Someone asks, "Where will I see signs of this divinity?" Contemplate the acorn. It seems inert, yet contains 1,000,000 times its volume in wood. The inner divinity works the same way. It begins invisible, breaks the shell of old belief, and finding fertile soil becomes visible vigor and abundance. Your responsibility is to prepare the ground, right thought, harmonious emotion, coherent action. You might argue, "I have tried to think positively and problems persist." Remember, a garden is not freed of weeds by a single weeding. Mental discipline is continuous. Old habits have years of root. New direction requires consistency. Truth does not delay, the human mind does. Persevere and you will see the harvest. A case study. During the recent decade of economic hardship, the press calls it the Great Depression, I have seen unemployed men regain their livelihood when they accepted this principle. One worker came to me in despair. I said, "You are not seeking a job, you are seeking to express God's abundance. Stand firm tomorrow. The spirit of abundance works through me. My perfect place is revealed now." Within days, he received an offer at a workshop better positioned than the previous one. Miracle? No. Mental law in action. It is important to emphasize, divine filiation does not nullify human law. It transcends it without violating it. Perform your civic duties, but do so with the consciousness that God works in all things. Thus, structures transform without conflict. Remember Joseph in Egypt, slave, then administrator of the kingdom. As he rose, he retained in a vision, and vision attracted circumstances. Weekly exercise. Each night before sleep, repeat calmly, "I am a child of God, heir to all good. My world reflects this truth." Let the phrase sink like gentle rain. Do not analyze, do not argue. Allow the subconscious to plant the seed. Upon awakening, declare, "Today I will manifest my divine filiation in thought, word, and deed." Observe the changes. You may fear pride. Remember, pride compares, Christ consciousness identifies. The more you recognize your divinity, the more humble you will be, for you will see the same spark in every brother. The Christ in me greets the Christ in you. This is true brotherhood. Affirmative prayer. Father, our principle of life, I acknowledge your presence in my mind and heart. I know you created me in your image and likeness, and I now declare that your power acts in me without obstacle or delay. Illuminate every thought, purify every feeling, guide every action so that your glory is reflected in my life and in the lives of all around me. So it is, and so it shall be. Chapter 2. Let the principle of I am. When Moses approached the mystery of the burning bush and asked the name of the one speaking from the flames, he received a startling answer, "I am who I am." This phrase, which in the original Hebrew corresponds to a verb in the continuous tense, does not describe a person or a static title. It expresses pure existence, self-sufficient, without external cause or possibility of lack. With it, the text declares that supreme reality is not defined by adjectives, but by being itself. New Thought understands that when one pronounces I am, any individual contacts that same creative core that burned without being consumed in the desert. Just as the fire of the vision did not depend on wood to remain, the divine spark of I am does not depend on material conditions to act. It is enough to recognize it and act from it. The true meaning of I am. Consider what we truly affirm when we say I am. It is not a mere pronoun joined to a copulative verb. It is a declaration of existence that precedes any attribute. Before saying rich or poor, healthy or sick, successful or failing, The mind uses I am as an invisible support that grants reality to the added quality. For this reason, the subsequent word becomes a seed. It receives the creative intelligence of being and germinates according to its kind. If we add a qualifier of limitation, we attract limitation. If we add an attribute of fullness, we precipitate fullness. The mechanism operates with the cold precision of physical law, even if its results seem miraculous to the unobservant eye. I have seen men turn the phrase "I am incapable" into a chain that immobilizes their will for years, and the moment they replace the inner decree with "I am competent," the same latent capacities reorganize and flourish under identical circumstances. Why negative self-images persist. Why do we so easily accept negative identifications? The reason is historical. We grew up hearing that human beings are weak and imperfect, and inherited mental images of collective guilt that embed themselves in the subconscious. These images, even if unspoken, continue to operate. Each time we face a challenge, the latent memory whispers, "I am inadequate." The obedient mind projects the corresponding movie onto the stage of reality. Until that record is rewritten, no external technique will reverse its effect. That is why Scripture insists on renewing the understanding. I am always functions. If we do not consciously direct it, inherited suggestion will do so in our place. This is the root of scientific prayer, not to persuade a distant God, but to re-educate the internal creative center to express the truth of its origin rather than the fantasy of fear. I am as the master key. Imagine a telegraph office such as were widely used in the first half of the century. The operator enters a specific code, and instantly the signal travels thousands of miles of wire, reproducing the exact message at the other end. The key may consist of a brief pattern of taps, yet it transmits instructions that move goods, troops, or capital. I am functions in the same way. It is the master key that opens the universal network of energy and form. Trying to change life without using the key is as useless as hitting a telegraph apparatus at random, hoping an intelligible telegram will arrive. Many people pray, work, or struggle without first establishing the correct spiritual identity, hence the inconsistency of their results. Those who first establish themselves in I am consciousness and then designate the desired good discover an almost mathematical precision in the law's response. The grammar of thought. It is not enough to repeat a few affirmations aloud in the morning and then spend the day repeating contradictory formulas mentally. Internal dialogue, even silent, constitutes the primary emission that the subconscious records. A merchant may say in Sunday school, "I am prosperous," yet in the shop murmur 20 times, "I cannot handle all these expenses. Things are going from bad to worse." The dominant effect will be the last because it carries more emotion and is repeated frequently. The law does not distinguish tone or courtesy. It obeys predominant feeling. Hence Jesus warned, "A fountain cannot pour out both sweet and bitter water. He who desires sweet water chooses the source at the origin, not by trying to change the current downstream." I am and true identity. You may ask, is it not arrogance to say I am powerful? Let us answer with the image of a mirror. Suppose you see your reflection and declare, "This figure I see is mine." You do not claim to have created the mirror. You simply recognize the form that the glass reproduces. Similarly, when we say I am strong, we do not attribute power to our personal ego, but reflect the vigor of the presence dwelling in us. Pride boasts a finite force that competes. True identity recognizes an infinite force that shares. The clearer one understands the principle, the less desire there is to compare with others, because both drink from the same source. Here is revealed the meaning of genuine humility, not self-negation, but correct placement as a transparent channel. Misuse of I am. Consider now the flip side, narrative self-definitions. When a sick person proclaims I am diabetes or a student repeats I am hopeless at mathematics, they are tattooing the condition onto the very mold that could receive the solution. It is not stubbornness, it is a matter of using the denominating faculty in the correct order. The medical diagnosis describes a transient state. I am describes the permanent essence. Fusing them in a single phrase confuses levels and freezes the illness. Healthy practice consists of accepting facts as temporary messengers while reserving I am for attributes aligned with the perception of the principle. I am health, I am intelligence, I am balance. In doing so, we do not ignore symptoms, we introduce a new cause which, sustained long enough, will reconfigure the manifestation. The subconscious, as even contemporary psychologists teach, operates as a faithful recorder. It does not analyze the logical truth of the impression received. When it hears I am, it opens the door without asking for credentials and stores the phrase in its deep chamber. It then activates physiological, emotional, and circumstantial processes that reinforce the command. Even if the conscious mind forgets the declaration, the subconscious reproduces it in impulses, preferences, and seemingly fortuitous events. Understanding this mechanism is equivalent to possessing the key to inner omnipotence. Ignoring it exposes the individual to every wind of collective management. Hence the urgency of reviewing the charity of our inner discourse. Example of daily practice. A middle-aged woman told me that every time she cooked, she unconsciously repeated, "I am a disaster in the kitchen." She had heard it from her mother during childhood, and the phrase became an emotional refrain. As expected, dishes burned, cakes failed to rise, sauces curdled. I asked her to immediately replace it with, "I am harmony and order in my kitchen." At first she felt ridiculous, yet she persevered. Within 3 weeks, her cooking improved remarkably, to the point that her family began requesting recipes. When I am changed, latent skill emerged without external lessons. The principle recognizes no small tasks. It governs all matters of daily life. Daily self-examination. Ask yourself, what qualifiers do you attach to I am throughout your day? Make a rigorous inventory. Listen to your spontaneous exclamations, especially when surprised. It is in those immediate reactions that the engraved image is revealed. Do not be discouraged if you have habits of self-devaluation. Awareness alone begins healing. Start immediately replacing each limiting formula with one that expresses the divine ideal. Do not wait for permission from your mood. Act. Positive feeling will accumulate over time like music accompanying lyrics after repeated rehearsal. Embodying I am. A crucial point remains: the difference between repeating a phrase mechanically and embodying it. Power does not reside in sound vibration or the number of repetitions, but in the silent understanding that supports them. Before speaking your affirmations, pause for a few seconds and remember, I am is the name of God operating in you. Feel the current of life pulsating behind the word. Then add the attribute with calm conviction, avoiding the tension of one trying to convince a capricious judge. Recognize that the decree is already fulfilled on the invisible plane, and that visible circumstances will arrange themselves to reflect it in due order. Logic of the principle. Examine the principle logically. If cause is mental and the mind functions through identification, I am. To deny this law is to deny the very possibility of reflective thought. To affirm I am conscious of thinking demonstrates that every idea about ourselves is formulated through the same structure. To deny the omnipotence of I am would be to accept that the defining faculty has no effect, which contradicts our daily experience. Each decision, every bodily gesture, is part of a prior self-definition, even if instantaneous. The reasoning, therefore, is not based on misty mysticism, but on observing how consciousness precedes events in all observable orders. Social projection of I am. When you elevate your individual conception, you contribute to elevating collective conception, for the universal mind records your new pattern and offers it as possibility to others. Wars and economic depressions begin among crowds that unknowingly accept a fearful, deficient, hostile I am. Peace and prosperity begin with individuals who internally sustain a loving, abundant, fraternal I am. Each thought based on divine identity flows as a current of light others can tune into. Thus we participate in the practical establishment of God's kingdom, not through coercive proselytism, but through the natural radiation of our corrected consciousness. 7-day exercise. For the next 7 days, select one area to transform: health, finances, relationships, and write a short affirmation beginning with I am, followed by the perfect state desired. For example, I am abundant provision now manifested, or I am the life of God renewing every cell. Repeat the phrase slowly and attentively upon waking, before each meal and at bedtime. Do not demand immediate results. Affirm the completed result in the divine mind and observe the peace that follows. Keep a small notebook and record each time you notice a change, however small, in attitude or circumstances. At the end of the week, review the list. You will be surprised at how many signs confirm the action of the law once the correct password is used. Concluding blessing. I finally invoke the blessing that springs from the sacred name. Eternal Father, I am your living expression. I am intelligence, I am love, I am power. From this moment, my words reproduce your truth and my actions confirm it. By recognizing your presence as my identity, all fear dissolves, all doubt clears, all lack is fulfilled. I am the channel through which your inexhaustible good flows, blessing every being that crosses my path. So it is because I am. Chapter 3, The Mind of Christ. When the Apostle Paul declares to the Corinthians, "We have the mind of Christ," he is not stating a privilege exclusive to initiates, but describing the spiritual architecture to which every human being can deliberately access. The phrase, examined through the lens of metaphysics, indicates that a pre-established mental model exists, the mind of Christ, which operates as a perfect template for perception and action. Even when ordinary reactions seem dictated by instinct, each person possesses the faculty to elevate their focus from the fluctuating psychic level to the immutable Christ level. In doing so, one translates into acts the omnipotence we saw declared in previous chapters. Understanding the difference between common thoughts and the mind of Christ is therefore the logical step following the assumption of I am, as it gives content and objective direction to the newly accepted divine identity. It transforms a generic declaration into a practical horizon for every circumstance. Not imitation, but principle. It is important to clarify from the outset, we are not speaking of a devotional copy of the personality of Jesus of Nazareth, nor of externally reproducing the customs of his era, his garments, or rigid pedagogical methods. Jesus was the visible historical manifestation. Christ is the timeless inner dimension. Just as projected light adopts the shape of every window without ceasing to be light, Christ expressed himself through Jesus with full intensity. However, the pattern of that consciousness, unified vision, unconditional love, authority over form, remains intact, waiting as a latent option in the psyche of every man and woman. Whoever affirms themselves as a child of God recognizes the inheritance. Whoever cultivates the mind of Christ invests the inheritance and produces yield. The difference between theory and power is measured precisely by that change of mind Paul proposes. How Christ thought in concrete challenges. How did Christ think when faced with concrete challenges? The Gospel provides precise scenes. In the storm on the lake, the crew struggles and cries out. Jesus sleeps because his mind rests in the certainty that the universe is ordered. Upon being awakened, he does not analyze the wind's direction or consult nautical charts. His first act is to calm collective fear. Then he commands the sea, "Peace, be still," a phrase reflecting divine authority over appearance. Observe the sequence: inner calm, verbal authority, external manifestation. Such is Christ's engineering. The same principle occurs in the multiplication of loaves. Rather than calculating costs and carts, he instructs the crowd to recline. A symbol of prior alignment, he gives thanks, aligns with the source, and distributes what he has, demonstrating operative trust. Mental order precedes phenomenal abundance. Whoever assumes this model immediately understands that each visible problem is a frozen effect of a dualistic idea, and that the genuine solution emanates from looking with the undivided eye that recognizes no opposition between the Father's will and present need. Compassion and certainty. It is important to stress that the mind of Christ does not ignore appearances, but refuses to grant them intimacy. When Martha laments Lazarus' death, Jesus does not recite escapist slogans. He weeps with the family, demonstrating full sensitivity. Yet he immediately shifts his focus to the causal level, proclaiming, "Father, I thank you that you always hear me." This anticipatory gratitude reveals the conviction that life never ceases. It only changes its mode of manifestation. He then calls his friend by name as Christ recognizes individuality and rescues it from oblivion without absorbing it. Thus, the operational principle is illuminated. Compassion unites with certainty. Human emotion rises without negating itself, and the creative word seals the order. Rereading each miracle with metaphysical lenses is equivalent to dissecting the exact laws of the Christ mind, just as an electrical engineer studies a circuit diagram before reproducing it in his lab. Practical steps. Assuming this mind requires continuous attention, the first step is to distinguish the inner voice that speaks from divine affiliation from the many dry echoes arising from the past, education, and collective pressure. The Christ voice is serene, direct, and without recrimination. It issues no condemnation, exposes truth, demands no sacrifice, and calls forth trust. When a dilemma arises, pause and ask the key question: does this idea I am considering come from fear or from fullness? If you notice anxiety, you are hearing the old man. If you perceive a silent yes, even if your reason does not understand the mechanism, you are touching Christ. This simple act of discernment dissolves half of misfortunes, as it prevents decisions made under the hypnosis of panic. Here, scientific prayer becomes a lucid pause, aligning before acting so that subsequent action does not contradict the inner design. The Christ mind in daily life. Some may object that such exercise demands impossible pauses in modern life. Frenzied Wall Street offices, industrial workshops proliferating since the Great War. Yet experience shows that seconds of well-trained stillness are enough to reinstall the Christ frequency. Just as an expert telegrapher distinguishes the code amid the murmur of multiple lines, the practitioner immediately captures the correct vibration amid the noise. To achieve this, it is advisable to install small stations of silence throughout the day. Upon waking, before attending the first visitor, at the table, particularly before sleep, at each station repeat mentally, the mind of Christ guides this situation and continues the work. No dramatization is needed. The law requires only coherence. Renouncing guilt. Another essential facet is the conscious renunciation of guilt. When Jesus confronted the adulterous woman, he did not validate the crime nor fuel shame. He declared, "Neither do I condemn you, go and sin no more." Here the Christ mind reveals its modus operandi: recognize error as ignorance, offer immediate liberation, and propel constructive change. If you wish to adopt this pattern for yourself, cease self-flagellation over past failures. Declare the purpose to learn and move forward. Every prolonged self-reproach sustains the small self. Every acceptance of forgiveness restores the divine self. It is clear, the condemning voice never proceeds from Christ. It stems from the gregarious instinct fearing loss of control. The moment judgment is replaced by understanding, the emotional circuit deactivates and opens space for precise inspiration to resolve the issue. I have witnessed entrepreneurs on the brink of ruin adopt this internal posture, discard resentment toward partners, and achieve in weeks the financial restructuring that accountants and lawyers deemed impossible. Service as expression. Equally noteworthy is the energy of service as a natural expression of the Christ mind. Jesus washed the feet of his disciples, not as a humiliating ceremony, but to demonstrate that true authority is verified in the ability to uplift another. Whoever thinks from Christ does not calculate material gain from each connection. Rather, they examine what aspect of divine good can be given, and through that giving, they receive multiplied. The underlying logic is impeccable. The mind can only recognize what it gives. Sharing fullness intensifies the consciousness of possessing it. Ask yourself before closing the day, where did I express today the intelligence, goodness, or joy of Christ dwelling in me? This filial audit, far from imposing moral burden, reminds you of the creative function you came to exercise, prevents passive complacency, and sustains you in the frequency where resources arrive without violent effort. Training technique. For practical readers seeking a systematic method, I propose the technique of corresponding imagery. Choose a gospel scene, for example, the calming of the sea. In meditation, place yourself as an active participant. Feel the humid air, hear the oars, observe the waves. Then incorporate the serene presence of Jesus and allow his certainty to permeate your emotions. Next, transfer that atmosphere to a personal problem, a pending bill, a medical test, a domestic conflict. Contemplate the situation from the same piece. Then pronounce a short phrase summarizing the solution. As perfect order manifests and concludes, repeat the exercise daily until a glimpse of that peace arises spontaneously upon recalling the matter. That glimpse indicates your subconscious has housed the Christ template and will begin producing visible changes. This is not blind management. It is spiritual engineering applied to the subconscious, which, as part of the universal mind, will coordinate unimaginable means to actualize the ideal. Collective effect. Do not forget the expansive nature of this consciousness. Every time one of us adopts the mind of Christ amid a social crisis, we modify the collective mental atmosphere. This occurred when visionaries during the recent economic depression refused to spread the scarcity panic. Their businesses not only survived, but provided employment to hundreds, counteracting ambient fear. The group mind, like a sensitive ocean, registers each focal point of order and propagates it in waves. Those who internalize this responsibility cease lamenting the world state and begin being living points of restoration, without fanfare or propaganda, because truth acts with the silent precision of light dispersing shadow without sound. Integrative practice for the next 2 weeks. Week 1. Observe and halt every thought of condemnation. Week 2. Immediately replace it with the affirmation, "The mind of Christ interprets this situation correctly." Week 3. Translate the new interpretation into a concrete act of mercy or order. Record the effects. You will see the mental pattern consolidate, and with it, external evidence, peace in the body, clarity in finances, harmony in relationships. Such a sequence confirms that no situation is beyond the mind of Christ when installed as an ordering principle, and that every moment of ordinary life can become a cradle of miracles if seen through the eyes of the Son. Closing prayer. Father of infinite wisdom, we now recognize that the mind of Christ is our true mind. We allow your unique vision to replace our fragmented perceptions. Where we saw conflict, we see your order. Where we feared loss, we see your abundance. Where offense caused pain, we feel your forgiveness. We commit to thinking, speaking, and acting from this consciousness, so that your kingdom may be expressed in our work, homes, and nations. So it is, because our mind and your Christ's mind are one, now and forever. Chapter 4. Mental Law and Divine Law. The entire visible universe functions through a dual mechanism: the mental law, which describes the way each image held by consciousness takes form, and the divine law, which reveals the eternal intention of the principle to express only good. Understanding the harmonious relationship between the two is equivalent to possessing the master plan of creation, for when the individual discovers that the mind constitutes the hinge where the finite and infinite meet, they assume not only the right but the duty to collaborate intelligently with the cosmic impulse. No act, circumstance, or sensation exists that is not the result of this co-participation. For this reason, studying its mechanisms demands almost scientific objectivity, free from superstition and sentimentality. Just as a physicist interprets the fall of a body by appealing to gravity and not fortune, the metaphysician attributes every human phenomenon to the mental vibration that precedes it and to the divine law that sustains it, avoiding confusion of accidents with whims of a capricious God. Mental law. We call mental law the principle by which thought united with feeling generates its equivalent on the phenomenal plane. For as he thinks in his heart, so is he, states Proverbs, and history confirms this assertion. Empires are born from the vision leaders hold in their hearts. Inventions arise from the image the artisan entertains before shaping matter. Collective crises germinate from the panic that crowds feed through weeks of rumors and discussions. The mind, therefore, is not a diffuse cloud but a generative matrix. Its products, though they take solid form, never cease to be projections of the original idea. However, such capacity could lead to chaos if there were not a higher counterbalance that guarantees universal coherence. That counterbalance is divine law, the innate tendency of the spirit to display order, beauty, and abundance, analogous to the instinct guiding an acorn to become an oak rather than a weed. Humans, endowed with free will restricted to the field of appearance, may use their minds to sow discordant images, but they cannot nullify life's essential design, which will eventually redirect every misguided effort toward the common good, even if this requires the corrective experience we call suffering. The river and the locks. Let us visualize it through the metaphor of a river and locks. The powerful continuous current symbolizes divine law, flowing from the mountain of absolute being to the ocean of manifestation, nourishing every valley. The locks represent the individual mind, allowing water to pass or halting it, according to the gate's angle. If the operator opens only one side, the torrent swirls and undermines the embankments. If kept closed, the channel dries and the fields wither. When opened wisely, the current irrigates the land in the proper measure. Nothing changes the generous nature of the water. What changes is the care of the operator. Similarly, divine good is always ready, but its entry into concrete life depends on the mental positioning of the individual. Those who cultivate thoughts of harmony align the gates and receive a calm flow. Those who harbor resentment introduce obstruction and provoke turbulence, which they then attribute to chance. Here lies the moral and practical significance of inner self-governance. The three phases of mental law. What does mental law consist of in practice? It has three visible phases: attention, acceptance, and expectancy. Attention focuses the energetic lens on a specific point. Acceptance impregnates that form with consent of reality, giving it vital warmth. Expectancy sustains the matrix without hesitation until the invisible mold condenses into physical reflection. These phases occur even when the subject is unaware. Thus, chronic fear produces its feared adversaries with millimetric precision, as it fulfills the same stages with a negative seal. Knowing the sequence is not enough, it is necessary to choose content in accordance with divine law to avoid the paradox of using a perfect instrument for a self-destructive purpose. Applying divine law. The Gospel of John provides the formula: the Son can do nothing of himself but what he sees the Father doing. Translated into mental mechanics, keep attention on the perfection conceived by the principle. Accept that this perfection includes you. Wait without anxiety for its inevitable manifestation. Reconciling natural disasters and human suffering. A natural question arises. If divine law always works for good, how do we explain natural disasters, disease, and injustice? The answer lies in the distinction between universal plan and individual experience. The plan contains only fullness, but the human mind, by adopting beliefs of separation, generates projections of lack. These projections clash and produce intermediates we call catastrophes or epidemics. Such events are not divine punishment. They are statistical outcomes of millions of discordant thoughts interacting and ultimately self-limiting. When a community elevates its mental vibration through love and coherence, statistics favorably shift. Floods decrease, crime diminishes. There is no magic or arbitrary intervention. There is resonance between the master idea and the objective field. Hence, Jesus linked individual healing, forgiveness, and faith, two mental states that restore affinity with divine law and allow the organism, microcosm of the universal mind, to reorganize according to its perfect archetype. Daily application, triadic examination. To translate this into daily action, adopt a method of constant verification. I suggest the triadic examination: predominant thought, associated emotion, consequent act. At day's end, mentally review your main scenes. Adjust the lens of memory on a financial matter, a health concern, and a relational issue. Identify which image dominated your mental screen, what feeling colored it, and what act resulted. If the act showed tension or failure, return to the root thought and deliberately replace it with a vision reflecting divine law, abundance, vitality, concord. Associate it with a feeling of gratitude. Imagine the corresponding conduct. Repeat until the subconscious replaces the old record. Practiced consistently, this transforms life with the inexorability of the seasons changing the landscape. Avoiding misconceptions. A frequent objection is that such discipline diminishes spontaneity, that life should flow without scrutiny. This confuses freedom with neglect. No one accuses a violinist of lacking spontaneity for practicing scales daily. Such practice allows mastery when performing. Similarly, aligning the mind with the law confers creative flexibility, reducing internal resistance and allowing the spirit to act with infinite imagination. Those who watch their field of ideas do not become rigid. On the contrary, they become pliable instruments in the hands of wisdom. Life then attains a rhythm of synchronicities, which the ignorant see as luck, but the student recognizes as communion with the divine current. Prosperity and harmony. Another myth, that repeating affirmations can force divine law for selfish advantage. Such an approach conflicts with the very principle it seeks to use. Thought carries vibration of lack and fear. It produces finite results of short duration, followed by equivalent loss. Mental law delivers what is requested in appearance because it does not judge morality. Divine law, seeing fidelity to harmony, rebalances the system, perhaps through setbacks, failures, or disappointments, to compel review of the motive. True prosperity does not seek advantage over others or nature. It seeks to manifest the fullness that by right of divine sonship belongs to all. When an entrepreneur, for example, assumes that their company is a channel of service, as well as a source of legitimate profit, prosperity stabilizes, labor quality improves, and the community grows. Harmonious exchange illustrates the synergy between both laws. Reasoned faith. The transition from theory to experience requires reasoned faith, conviction based on repeated observation. I suggest a simple 30-day experiment. Choose a specific matter, for example, a difficult colleague. Each morning decree, the divine law of love and understanding now acts in our mind. Mental law reproduces that love in our conduct. Avoid inner arguments, wait for the appropriate circumstance. Proceed courteously, record changes without exaggeration or underestimation. After 1 month, results become a personal testimony more eloquent than any treatise. Stable understanding arises not from external authority, but from direct experience of the principle. Conscious prayer. Finally, we reach the devotional aspect that unifies the process. Conscious prayer. To pray is not to beg for exception from the law, but to recognize its perfection and affirm our availability to obey it. Each time we say that, Father, thy will be done, we renounce the narrow concepts of the personal self and open the door to the creative flow that knows more than we do. This intelligent surrender is not passivity, it is supreme cooperation. The individual mind rises above its limited horizon and places itself in the channel of the universal mind, from which ideas arrive that ordinary logic could never suspect. Those who practice this prayer discover that decisions arise with clarity, time seems to expand, and the appropriate resources appear without struggle, like puzzle pieces fitting themselves. Closing affirmation. Reflect. Mental law provides the mold. Divine law supplies the substance and gracious direction. Neglecting one is like driving a cart with only one wheel. Ignoring the other is like carrying barrels of fresh water while dying of thirst for failing to open them. Integrate them. Thus one assumes divine identity with earthly efficacy, becoming a conscious architect of the good that has always sought expression. Who understands this ceases to beg favors from worldly powers and dedicates themselves to sowing ideas of justice, beauty, and love, knowing the harvest will arrive with geometric precision, for the universal mind never spoils the seed placed by right thought. Omniscient Father, we recognize that your law governs the universe with absolute perfection, and that our mind, aligned with you, transmits your order to every atom of our existence. We now declare that our thoughts are clear, our feelings noble, and our actions just, so that the river of your infinite good flows unobstructed and fertilizes all we touch. So it is because your mental law executes and your divine law inspires. Chapter 5. Discipline of Thought. The human mind, like a fertile garden, invariably produces whatever is sown within it. And just as a responsible gardener walks daily along the furrows to remove weeds and protect the useful seed, the spiritual student must practice constant mental hygiene to ensure coherence between the seed of truth and the outward fruit. It is not enough to intellectually understand mental law, nor to affirm our divine sonship with enthusiasm. It is essential to guard the ground where such truths germinate, because experience shows that even the noblest vision can be choked by invasive thoughts without continuous vigilance. This chapter presents a practical method of discipline divided into 3 interdependent tasks. Establish periods of prior silence. Deliberately select the ideas we admit. Maintain continuous watch to detect and neutralize any infiltration of fear or resentment before it takes root. 1. Inner silence. In an age dominated by the clamor of factories, trams, and newspapers competing to shout the most alarming headline, the mind receives thousands of contradictory stimuli without time to digest them. The result is a psychological fog, mistaken for legitimate thought, which actually contains no creative orientation, only the echo of collective distraction. One who desires to govern their destiny must reserve a daily interval, not necessarily long, but sacred, to withdraw attention from all external images and immerse themselves in the stillness where the I Am can hear the gentle voice of inspiration. This is not about emptying the mind passively, but exposing it to the ordering presence, as a loom remains still for a moment before receiving the new thread that will complete the design. The practice can be performed at dawn when the house sleeps and the city barely stirs, or at dusk when the last rays invite reflection. The key is regularity, for the mind, like a muscle, strengthens through disciplined repetition, not sporadic enthusiasm. During these minutes, adopt a comfortable posture, relax the body without neglecting alignment, and direct attention with serene firmness to a single affirmation that summarizes the central truth. God is my life, my intelligence, and my power. Hold the phrase until every other image yields, allowing the resulting peace to penetrate the deep layers of the subconscious. Those who persevere will discover that silence is not emptiness, but a matrix where unforeseen solutions arise, later manifesting as opportunities, intuitions, or revealing coincidences. 2. Deliberate selection of ideas. The mind is not a neutral repository that innocently records impressions like a photograph. It is a living organism that digests, assimilates, and reproduces each concept in terms of feelings and actions. Just as the prudent man avoids food harmful to metabolism, the metaphysical student rejects toxic thoughts, understanding the law of manifestation. This implies excluding conversations that glorify misfortune, limiting the reading of morbid material, and above all, monitoring internal dialogues, which often become gatherings of defeat if left unchecked. By consciously choosing ideas, one exercises admission rights to the mental banquet, inviting only guests that contribute to the health and prosperity of the personal and social organism. To facilitate this, keep a notebook divided into 2 columns. Column 1, ideas that elevate. Column 2, ideas that depress. At the end of the week, review the list and observe which column received more ink. The purpose is not to generate guilt, but to provide an objective mirror revealing imperceptible habits. Even a single repeated thought of fear contaminates the internal atmosphere, just as a drop of ink darkens a clear glass of water. 3. Continuous vigilance. Continuous vigilance integrates the previous 2 tasks, giving them sustained efficacy. It is not cerebral tension nor neurotic self-censorship. It is the alert attitude of a sentinel, familiar with the nature of the kingdom they protect, effortlessly distinguishing the legitimate from the intruder. Cultivate it by developing the habit of stopping the chain of associations before it becomes a descending spiral. When a discordant thought arises, do not fight it violently nor allow it to proliferate. Simply replace it immediately with its positive counterpart. If the mind whispers, "I fear I will fall ill," affirm instead, "The life of God sustains me perfectly and vigorously." Instant replacement prevents the negative image from taking root, just as pulling a tender weed requires a light gesture, whereas uprooting an adult bush demands sweat and effort. Remember, the subconscious does not recognize irony or sarcasm. It records faithfully the dominant emotion of thought, so attempting to negate a fear with cynicism is fatal. A disciplined consciousness, by contrast, transforms every exclamation into an intentional creative act. Practical effects. Some fear that vigilance will make them heavy or artificial in social conversation. Experience proves the opposite. Those who learn to guard their words and thoughts radiate calm and joviality, no longer wasting energy on remorse or reparations. Mental discipline does not suppress spontaneity. It frees creativity by eliminating self-destructive impulses that cloud the inspired flow. Just as a violinist trained in technique can improvise freely, a mind habituated to order thinks with a fluidity that amazes the untrained observer. History recounts that Michelangelo spent hours preparing sketches before touching marble. Then at the quarry, his hand moved with such assurance that spectators believed they were witnessing sudden inspiration. Likewise, an idea cultivated in silence and protected by strict selection projects at the precise moment, astonishing those unaware of prior preparation. Emotional component. Thought is the vehicle, emotion is the fuel. An idea imbued with living conviction travels great distances, while the same idea held coldly barely moves. Thus, mental selection includes cultivating coherent feelings: gratitude, trust, goodwill. Gratitude for anticipated good amplifies the vibration that attracts its equivalent. Goodwill toward an apparent adversary neutralizes hostility that could crystallize into open conflict. Emotional hygiene implies prompt forgiveness, for resentment is toxic residue that heats the psyche and corrodes the noble part of the mind. Practicing forgiveness does not justify offense, but prevents external violations from contaminating the closed source of inner creativity. When Jesus instructed to forgive 70 times 7, he was prescribing radical hygiene, not mystical arithmetic. Better to clean frequently than to allow spiritual waste to rot, generating illness or economic imbalance. Practical application in daily life. Some object that discipline belongs only to withdrawn aesthetes, since merchants, mothers, or workers lack long introspection hours. Experience contradicts this. Those exposed to the greatest stimulus density need and develop concise methods. An industrial worker pauses 3 seconds between notes to repeat their affirmation. A mother introduces gratitude into the dough she kneads. A merchant reviews a prosperity phrase while waiting for the next client. These are not added tasks, but flashes of truth inserted into daily intervals, like an engineer strengthening a bridge with strategic rivets that support tons without altering its aesthetic. Weekly practice framework. Monday. Observe internal dialogue without intervention. Note dominant phrases. Tuesday. Immediately correct negative thoughts from Monday. Record substitutions. Wednesday. Extend the practice to spoken words. Instantly correct discouraging expressions. Thursday. Include emotional body by holding gratitude regardless of external signs. Friday. Prolong inner silence to deepen peace. Saturday. Review written progress, celebrate achievements humbly to reinforce memory of success. Sunday. Reflect on the unity of individual and universal mind. Rest, cementing the work and showing trust in the law. After 4 weeks, the student notices palpable changes, primarily an internal sense of mastery independent of external conditions. Continuity and spontaneity. How long should discipline continue? There is no graduation after which it may cease because the mind continues creating while the heart beats. Mental hygiene simplifies and softens with habit, but cannot be abandoned without consequences. What initially demands deliberate effort becomes second nature, until constructive thought arises as spontaneously as a musician humming a favorite scale. This spontaneity is not a gift, but the fruit of repeated micro-decisions forming the fabric of a purified mind. Closing affirmation. Thus, the discipline of thought is neither cold technique nor severe moralism. It is art of living, science of freedom, and an act of self-love expanding into service for others. Those who cultivate silence, selection, and vigilance become centers of harmony, radiating clarity that brings order to confusion and serenity that dissolves storms. There is no higher privilege nor more urgent task in these tumultuous times than to discipline the mind, translating the music of the Spirit without distortion. O Father of infinite goodness, we thank you and accept the responsibility of using it with purity. May your wisdom inspire our silence, love guide our selection of ideas, and your power strengthen our vigilance, so that no shadow nests in the sanctuary of our soul, and we may offer the world the integral light that comes from you. So it is, and so it remains. Chapter 6. Scientific Prayer. Prayer, long misunderstood as a fearful plea to a distant power, is in reality the deliberate act by which the human mind formulates and accepts the divine pattern it wishes to see materialized. We call it scientific, not because it relies on laboratory instruments, but because it rests upon constant, verifiable, and universal laws. This designation does not diminish its sacredness. It elevates it, demonstrating that communion with God is not a mystical privilege reserved for a few seers, but the right and responsibility of every rational being. Just as electricity responds to one who understands its conductors and fuses, prayer yields results to anyone, regardless of creed or culture, who practices its steps with comprehension and persistence. This chapter presents the exact mechanics, step, timing, feeling, and provides clinical testimonies collected in hospitals, clinics, and mission halls, so the reader may discover that a well-formed affirmation transforms tissues, finances, and societies with the precision of a mathematical formula applied to the living soul. Step 1. Collection. Collection refers to the transition from peripheral noise to the quiet center of consciousness. No current of force can be transmitted if the connectors are loose. Similarly, a distracted mind cannot sustain creative voltage. The practitioner sets aside 5–10 minutes, if discipline permits, to suspend occupations, sit comfortably, uncross arms and legs, and direct attention inward with the phrase, "Here and now, God is my life and my intelligence." Concentration is not forced. It is allowed to settle like a dove finding a quiet perch. Slow breathing may be used, not as an esoteric ritual, but to signal the nervous system to release external alertness and allow the blood to pulse with serene rhythm. The mind does not argue with passing thoughts. It observes them depart like clouds, whose meteorological content does not concern the pilot soaring above. After a few days of practice, this initial silence occurs more quickly, and the practitioner realizes they are not generating stillness, but liberating the stillness that has always existed beneath the sensory waves. Step 2. Identification. Once attention is collected, the individual declares in the first person the universal truth corresponding to the matter they wish to harmonize. If the body shows disorder, I am the perfect life of God flowing in every cell. If finances show deficit, I am the wealth of God manifesting now in exact ideas and correct channels. The key lies in using the sacred name, I am, as a generating verb, never as an uncertain future or pleading request. As the phrase is spoken, one feels the reality already fulfilled, not as a remote possibility, but as a present fact, invisible to the senses, yet tangibly alive in the mental substance. This is the fundamental difference between scientific prayer and conventional petition. The former begins from the state accomplished. The latter begs for favors. The scientific prayer ascends from the altar of affiliation. The traditional supplicant cries from the barrier of separation. Hence Jesus, before multiplying loaves, gave thanks, seeing the result as already accomplished. Step 3. Visualization. The human mind naturally thinks in images. Verbal affirmation is therefore clothed in sensory form, so the subconscious can process the command more vividly. One visualizes the achieved goal, not the process. Prayer for health. See oneself walking upright, breathing freely, performing tasks that previously caused pain. Prayer for work. See oneself executing a useful function, receiving fair pay, offering joyful service. The image should be brief, clear, without theatrical dramatization that tires attention. Once seen, it is paired with the corresponding emotion, peace, gratitude, and released, like a farmer who plants the seed in well-tilled soil and does not unearth it every hour. A common error is confusing visualization with persistent fantasy. Visualization imprints the command, while fantasy reveals doubt, because the fantasizer fears the mold will fade if they stop watching it. Here detachment intervenes. Once accepted, the image rests in the hands of the law, unfolding in ways that may surpass personal logic. Step 4. Release. Release consists of consciously entrusting the outcome to infinite intelligence. Father, thank you because this is done. Show me how to cooperate. This surrender does not abdicate the human right to act. One relinquishes the need to dictate exact outcomes. The farmer does not design the molecular sequence of the seed. He trusts the seed's implicit wisdom. Similarly, the practitioner, after affirmation and visualization, proceeds through the day with calm expectation, ready to follow internal perceptions guiding the appropriate action. This expectation, not anxiety, keeps the perceptive channel open, through which the spirit suggests calls, readings, visits, or timely rest. When impatience arises, one repeats, The hour and the manner belong to God. My part is to remain faithful. Such fidelity prevents premature intervention that could mutilate the infant sprout before harvest. Timing and frequency. The subconscious assimilates gradually. A brief morning affirmation establishes a vibratory tone. Midday and afternoon reviews reinforce the line. Nighttime recap consolidates the planting as sleep opens the door to deeper belief deposits. Experience shows that 3 to 4 daily sessions of 3 minutes each are more effective than a sporadic marathon, followed by hours of neglect. Regularity overcomes accumulated mental inertia, just as continuous water dripping pierces stone, whereas a single hammer blow achieves nothing. Advanced students may concentrate the entire operation into a single act, but such energy economy requires prior discipline. Clinical examples. Case 1. Rheumatoid arthritis, 60-year-old woman. Repeated affirmation, I am the perfect flexibility of God manifesting in my joints, accompanied by visualizing her fingers moving freely. Practiced 4 times daily, 7 minutes each for 6 weeks. Pain reduced 60%, regaining fine motor function in 3 months. Case 2, gastric ulcer, war veteran. Affirmation, I am the perfect digestion of God, calm and complete. Visualized enjoying meals without discomfort. Within 4 weeks, bleeding ceased. After 3 months, tolerated previously irritating foods. Case 3, financial crisis, small printer. Affirmation, I am God's unlimited provision in specific action for this press. Visualize machines at full capacity, employees paid daily. After 2 months, received an unexpected government contract. Expanded staff, stabilized business. These examples illustrate that scientific prayer awakens mental substance, opening objective channels beyond anxious conception. Prayer is not a substitute for medical or practical effort, it enhances both. Practical rules. Pray, act, and witness. Prayer alone, passive doubt. Action without prayer, limited personal force. Prayer plus action transforms circumstances and strengthens collective good. Avoid common pitfalls. Impatience, manifestations follow their own timetable. Dispersion, focus on one affirmation until crystallized. Superstition, words alone do not work miracles, conviction does. Intercessory prayer, affirm the perfection of the individual without dictating personal details. Example, the spirit of life in John expresses as perfect health. Releases divine spark within, enhancing recovery without violating free will. Agricultural analogy. Every seed has a germination period. Minor issues may respond within hours. Deep-seated patterns require weeks or months. Do not measure faith by the clock. Celebrate every small sprout as a farmer celebrates the first green shoot, confident the full crop will come in season. Gratitude acts as fertilizer, magnifying the return of goodness. Summary framework. Collection, identification, visualization, release, regularity, witness. Practice without anxiety, with alert mind and trusting heart, and one discovers that prayer is both applied science and art of living. The means by which humanity rises to its legitimate role as conscious cooperator with God. As these laws spread, humanity will witness a dramatic reduction in psychosomatic illness, workplace conflicts, and commercial wars. As each individual experiences within themselves the source of security once sought in barbed wire and bank balances, then the Pauline admonition, pray without ceasing, will no longer sound exaggerated. It will be a logical invitation to keep the current flowing, like a power plant that does not cut supply once city lamps are lit. Closing affirmation. Eternal Father, we recognize that your will is perfect good, and that the channel to receive it is conscious prayer. We now affirm that our word, united with your truth, produces life, health, and abundance, that our mind conceives the ideal, our heart accepts it, and our body manifests it. We give thanks in advance, knowing that all is done in you, and we commit to carry out the actions your wisdom inspires, for the glory of the inner Christ and the service of all creation. Amen. Chapter 7. Creative Imagination. The mind possesses 2 great wings, thought and feeling. When both beat in unison, they rise to the plane where ideas condense into deeds. This harmonious beating is called creative imagination, a faculty that most mistake for childish entertainment or romantic flight from reason. In truth, it is the drawing room of the mind, where the future is sketched in advance, before the hand chisels stone or the artisan adjusts the machine. However, the drawing must begin from the goal, not toward it. Visualizing toward the goal contains the seed of distance and postpones the harvest. Visualizing from the goal transforms the idea into an inner present that demands immediate expression. It is the same principle governing chess. The master sees the final position completed in the mind and retraces move by move to the reality of the board. Hence, the pieces obey with mathematical precision. A common error is imagining the process in excessive detail, the loan approved, the interview successful, the contract signed, while neglecting the feeling of completion. Thus, the student unknowingly cultivates anxiety, because each intermediate scene still depends on external variables. Creative imagination, to be effective, skips the rungs and settles on the rooftop. There it breathes the air of the goal, then descends with confident steps, knowing the ladder already exists because the result presupposes it. When Jesus cried, "It is finished," he did not refer only to the spiritual work at large. He described the inner attitude that completes the task before the stone is removed. Those who adopt this stance discover that the mind generates unforeseen pathways, for the accepted end becomes a magnet, restructuring all intermediate events. Distinguishing fantasy from creative imagination. Passive fantasy entertains the ego with castles that dissolve upon contact with routine. It lacks firm emotional roots and decision to act. Creative imagination, in contrast, imprints command on the subconscious and awakens practical intelligence. It produces active peace, and the internal scene seems so real that the student acts coherently without conscious effort. It is the difference between dreaming of playing violin in a philharmonic and calmly enrolling in daily lessons, because the internal concert has already occurred. Hence the great violinist Paganini closed his eyes before performing and saw himself acclaimed. The future ovation shaped his present pulse. 4 movements for practice. Clear definition of the goal. It is not enough to say improve health. Be specific. Walk 15 blocks without fatigue, breathing freely. Installation of the picture. In silence, close the door and project the image on the inner screen. Include sensory details, smell of fresh air, warmth of the sun, rhythmic sound of footsteps. These impressions multiply emotional intensity. Emotional immersion. Absorb the scene until you feel serene joy. This is not jubilation, but the calm of mission accomplished. Sealing with a word, a brief affirmation. Thank you, Father, for this is done. This fixes the inner film, allowing the practitioner to return to daily affairs without doubts. 5 minutes suffice if concentration is sharp. Prolonging sessions when distracted is counterproductive. Directing mental construction. Some fear imagination will confuse reality and fantasy. In truth, that confusion already operates. Hypochondriacs invent symptoms. The fearful attract creditors despite solvent accounts. The goal is not to prevent the mind from constructing, but to direct its construction. The engineer does not forbid the river from overflowing. He channels its course. Those who train to visualize from the goal replace inherited images of failure with success pictures that the subconscious translates into posture, tone of voice, and advantageous synchronicities. This explains why some seem inevitably successful. It is not personal magic, but an internal scene repeated until it becomes atmosphere. Case examples. Young printer. He desired to run his own shop, but debt fears interfered. He was asked to paint another scene, himself, in his print shop, surrounded by linotypes, hearing the rhythmic hum, counting satisfied clients' packages at day's end with gratitude. Practiced 15 minutes at dawn and 10 before sleep for 40 days. By the 6th week, a retired owner offered the shop at a modest price, payable in installments. The opportunity was not fabricated. It was attracted because his mind was already the print shop, and the universe conformed to the internal mold. Teacher with rebellious eczema. She visualized herself with smooth skin, wearing short sleeves at the seaside. Initially, itching flared, a sign the old irritation image resisted. After 2 months, lesions diminished so much that the dermatologist, incredulous, asked for the treatment. She replied, "I visualized the goal already achieved." This demonstrates that the skin obeys images held in the psyche as faithfully as the economy obeys images of abundance. Emotional component. The image must be repeated in positive emotion. Emotion is the ink that engraves the plate. Reason alone is pencil fading with time. Joy, gratitude, and confidence strike the invisible plate and leave a deep impression. Monotone affirmations without feeling are ineffective. Recall past successes, imbue the image with that sensation, and then project the new goal. The subconscious recognizes the familiar vibration of victory. If the goal risks harming another, it violates divine law. Planning unjust advantage introduces fear of retaliation, contaminating the image with destructive residue. Success may appear, but will be followed by equivalent loss. Creative imagination must intuit the good of all involved. Visualize leadership with a team that prospers, colleagues also promoted. This scene vibrates in harmony with universal abundance, eliciting law without conflict. Auxiliary technique, image board. Cut out photos or draw symbols representing your goal. Luminous home, stamped passport, harmonious family. Fix them on cardboard in a private place. Each morning observe the board 30 seconds, not to wish but to assume possession. This is mine now. Then look away and proceed with daily tasks. During wartime, aviators who maintained images of home and embraced their family mentally survived campaigns statistically impossible, demonstrating the mind's power to direct physical resilience and decision-making. Harvest timing. Do not confuse harvest certainty with germination. The sower trusts the cycles. Each letter, meeting, or inspiration is a sprout. Nurture it with gratitude, returning to the matrix image like a sunbath, strengthening the plant. Doubt poisons young seeds. If your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. A single image maintained without inner competition is the essence of creative imagination. Alternating visions of wealth and poverty generate oscillations, periods of abundance followed by scarcity. Nighttime ritual. Before sleep, review the completed goal for 1 minute, express gratitude, and lower the imaginary curtain, signaling the subconscious to process without interference. At dawn, lift the curtain briefly, then proceed with the day. In time, life aligns with the projected image. This is not benevolent chance, but the universal mind retransmitting the nocturnal script. Children are natural masters. They immerse in imaginative play with absolute conviction. Adults replace this plasticity with critical density called realism. Recovering creative imagination requires childlike freshness guided by adult understanding, infusing responsibilities with vision. Weekly practice. Day 1. Write a specific goal and formulate the image. Days 2-7, morning and evening sessions 5 minutes each, reinforced with 30-second midday flash. Record all apparent progress. At week's end, review and give thanks. Repeat until manifestation. Over time, the mind develops creative automatism. Upon desire, the conclusive image arises immediately, imbued with gratitude. The individual lives, as it were, ahead of their biography, and physical existence aligns with the internal script. Closing affirmation, Father of tireless light. We give thanks because our imagination is the brush with which we paint your beauty on the world's canvas. We grant each inner picture the dignity of being your work. Sustain it with faith, seal it with love, and entrust it to the law that makes it visible. We declare that our eyes already behold what our hearts conceive, and all we conceive is good because it comes from you. Amen. Chapter 8, The Word of Power. From the beginning of time, the Hebrew tradition teaches that God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. This inaugural verb lifts a veil on the manner in which absolute reality projects its qualities into the visible scene. The conscious utterance of the word precedes the appearance of form. We do not refer to the mere physical sound of lips, but to the mental decree endowed with conviction that organizes the universal substance of thought and condenses it into tangible outcomes. The word, therefore, is not merely a vehicle of description, it is a generative instrument. Every time a person articulates a judgment about themselves, another, or circumstances, they issue a sentence that the mental law executes with inexorable diligence. The purpose of this chapter is to explain the structure of this mechanism, outline the conditions that give efficacy to the affirmative decree, and warn against careless speech, for a misdirected spark can ignite emotional fires as devastating as those that sweep Appalachian forests in summer. The dynamics of the creative word. Thought resides in the mind as a contourless idea, like an electric current in a wire. The word transforms it into articulated vibration, comparable to the spark that leaps in a lamp and ignites it. Not every spark illuminates. Some produce short circuits if the system lacks proper resistance. Similarly, a word without emotional support creates only fleeting flashes, whereas emotion, faith or fear, sustains the statement, fixing the discharge in the mental ether and initiating precipitation. Thus, a complaining mother who repeats to her child, "You are clumsy," can encapsulate in him the belief of clumsiness that will accompany him for years unless later discipline reverses the judgment. This principle shows no favoritism. It yields a harvest of thorns or roses depending on the seed sown in the word. Elements of an effective decree. Invoke the divine name, I am, or its implicit equivalent, connects the human word to absolute origin, just as a plug links a home device to a power plant. Use present tense. Avoid I will have someday, for delays imply separation and postpone manifestation. Express positive, concrete, and complete qualities. I am perfect health flowing in every cell, not I am less sick, which perpetuates residual illness vibrations. Speak with calm authority. No nervous shouting or timid whispering. Convey the consciousness of one commanding their own mental realm. Close with gratitude. Gratitude seals the circuit and prevents leakage of doubt, implying certainty of reception. Affirmation versus mechanical autosuggestion. Scientific affirmation arises from intellectual recognition and emotional acceptance of a spiritual truth. Mechanical autosuggestion merely repeats formulas, hoping phonetics will cast an automatic spell. Confusion has discredited the practice in some circles. Those who recite, I am rich, while internally lamenting scarcity, naturally attract no wealth, and skeptics mock the empty affirmation. Mental science clarifies, failure stems from divorce of thought and feeling, not from the principle itself. To precipitate reality, the word must embody unified idea and emotion. If doubt or fear exists, remove interference first through forgiveness, meditation, or re-education, then issue the decree. Biblical insight. Jesus never improvised lengthy prayers of petition. His method consisted of brief decrees filled with authority. Stretch forth your hand, arise and walk, be clean. Prior to this, he consciously connected with the Father in solitude. Returning to the crowd, his word acted as a sure dart, for the emotive charge of certainty saturated each syllable. Thus, verbal economy teaches that the power of a decree does not depend on the number of words, but on the intensity of conviction. Like a chemist titrating a solution with calculated precision, the metaphysician titles the mind with exact phrases, avoiding dilution in rivers of verbosity. Rhythm and repetition. It is advisable to establish cycles of declaration, for example, 7 times at dawn and 7 at night, followed by brief silent attention, visualizing the achieved result. This alternation of sound and silence imitates breathing. Exhale the word, inhale certainty. Some may track repetitions with a string of knots or a small abacus, not for superstition, but to ensure regularity and exact count, just as a pianist follows a metronome at the beginning of practice. Crucial is maintaining emotional freshness. If repetition becomes a somnolent litany, stop, refresh the inner image, and resume with vigor. Privacy and external influence. The spoken word may clash with others' disbelief. The creative decree is primarily for one's own subconscious, which houses the secondary matrix. External listeners are secondary. Still, social atmosphere matters. Repeating affirmations before mocking individuals can introduce contradiction into mental defenses. Jesus once sent unbelieving debtors out before raising a sleeping girl, for hostile vibrations obstructed the operation. Today, prudence recommends private decrees, sharing only with supportive people, or pronouncing them internally with full conviction. The thought alone vibrates with equal power. Clinical examples. Partial arm paralysis. After an industrial accident, doctors predicted permanent reduced mobility. He was taught to declare 10 times per hour, I am the perfect energy of God moving this arm freely. He combined it with maximum movement to anchor kinesthetic sensation. 2 weeks increased flexion, 6 weeks lifting light objects, 4 months nearly full function certified. Doctors credited physiotherapy, but the patient affirmed the word of power, sustained motivation, and enabled routine compliance. Economic case: Manhattan bookstore. Facing rising rent, the owner adopted God's word prospers this store. Each book finds its reader. Abundance flows freely. She repeated it 15 minutes before opening and 10 before closing, blessing shelves audibly. In 3 months, a professor offered a coursebook contract at preferential prices, sales increased, and the landlord extended terms without hike. The store survived and flourished. The word, issued with conviction and honest service, attracts unexpected opportunities. Caution: misuse of the tongue. The preacher vividly describing God's wrath or hell sows panic, producing neuroses or fanaticism. Merchants who repeat disaster forecasts may see the exact decline they verbalize. Malicious speech amplified by media creates the recession it fears. As Isaiah says, "According to your words, so shall it be." Self-verbalization. Impulsive exclamations like, "I'm stupid, always failing, starving." Implant decrees the subconscious takes literally. Correct immediately. "I learn quickly, my health is robust, abundance sustains me." Systematic erase and replace practice retrains verbal flow and reduces accidents. A word journal aids vigilance. Record each negative judgment, time, and cause. Recognize patterns and issue preventive decrees before entering triggering environments. I am patience and divine order guiding this tram. Effects may influence even others' moods. Language and continuity. In any language works. The law listens to conscious vibration, not diction. Mother tongue often carries richer emotional resonance, imprinting more deeply. Biblical Hebrew or Greek terms may be used if understood, to awaken reverence. The decree is persistent. Do not abandon upon first sprouts. Maintain brief, pilot-light versions for long-term objectives. The superior form blessing. Blessing recognizes good in others or situations, even amid apparent shadows. It liberates the other's potential and protects oneself from criticism contagion. Example: I bless the Christ in you, expressing now as consideration and harmony, transforms difficult neighbors without argument. Practice exercise. Choose an area: health, finance, relationships. Formulate 3 concise decrees following the above requirements. Write on cards, carry in pocket, repeat at appointed times. Record manifestations. After 30 days, compare start and finish. The contrast confirms the power of conscious speech and encourages refinement. Closing affirmation. Father of immutable truth, we acknowledge the privilege of sharing your creative word. We declare that each phrase from our lips reflects your wisdom, builds, heals, and prospers. Henceforth, every conversation becomes a channel of good. Every affirmation vibrates with your power and precipitates realities of order, joy, and abundance. Thank you for speaking in us and through us, and that what we decree in your name manifests without delay for your glory and the well-being of all. So it is, so it shall be, so it remains. Chapter 9. Love as a causal force. All the law is summed up, affirmed Paul, in a single word: love. He spoke as a spirit versed in Hebrew logic and Greek dialectics, having studied Aramaliel and traveled across the empire. Yet he concluded that the essence and goal of spiritual science is love. We do not refer to the fleeting emotion poets place beside the moon, nor to familial affection dependent on good upbringing and gentle temperament. We speak of agape, the unconditional energy flowing from the source, pouring over the worthy and the unworthy alike, for it is the very nature of God projecting without calculation. When Jesus proclaimed that he makes the sun rise on the just and unjust, he was not describing a sentimental gesture, but explaining the impartial distribution of a causal force that, upon touching a receptive consciousness, fulfills the law completely, dissolving all obstacles as spring dissolves ice, without dispute or violence. Understanding the identity of love with law is crucial. Loving is not merely a private ethical virtue, it is high-level mental engineering, releasing divine potency toward points of friction, like an electrician connecting a wire to illuminate a dark room. How love operates. To modern intellects trained in gears and laboratory chemistry, such assertions may seem airy metaphysics. Students demand proof. How can love heal a body, multiply income, or pacify nations? The explanation lies in the dual structure of the mind described in previous chapters. The mental law faithfully reproduces the prevailing image. The divine law imbues every image with a tendency toward good. Agape love fuses these operations, erasing the impression of separation that generates fear, the root of disease, poverty, and violence. When a person holds hatred, they declare, "This and I are separate." The obedient mind erects barriers that interrupt the vital flow and precipitate deterioration. By reversing the decree, "I and this one are one in God," love melts the barrier, and the current of life resumes its course. Physical, emotional, or economic healing that follows is not arbitrary miracle, but restoration of energetic continuity. What seemed a tumor reabsorbs because the tissue receives the constructive directive. What seemed an economic deficit resolves as commerce flows unimpeded by psychological constriction. Distinguishing divine love from personal affection. Personal affection says, "I love you because you benefit me, belong to my family, or give me pleasure." It depends on conditions and falters at the first disappointment. Agape love declares, "I recognize you, child of God, identical to me, regardless of your present behavior." It transcends preferences because it is ontological, not preferential. This does not negate the gravity of certain human actions. Moral judgment is subordinated to spiritual vision. Like an engineer confronting a defective foundation, one does not abandon the building, but corrects, reinforces, and heals. Hence Jesus forgives without relativizing error. "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." The person is separated from the misstep. The flow of love corrects the mental derivation, producing the external effect. Practical technique. Many struggle with loving adversaries, competitors, or difficult relatives. Here is a concrete method. In silence, visualize the person surrounded by golden light. Repeat with serenity, "I recognize the eternal Christ in you. I declare God's love is now at work in your mind, heart, and affairs. I release you and let you be free. I am at peace." Do not argue with imagination. Each flash of anger recalls the luminous image. Persist daily. Soon relief will be felt in the solar plexus, an indication that mental resistance is weakening. Within days, external circumstances begin to shift. The adversary moderates or exits the scene naturally. Even if the form persists, the law is fulfilled. Love causes rectification, even when the visible outcome defies personal expectation. Illustrative examples: 2 foremen in a New Jersey factory competed with open hostility, reducing productivity. One learned the exercise above, blessing his rival mentally for 3 weeks without verbal disclosure. Atmosphere softened, cooperation arose, and unexpectedly the plant owner offered them joint leadership of an expanded section, doubling their salary. The other foreman said, "I don't know what happened. Suddenly I realized we fought over nonsense." The causal force of love dissolved conflict consciousness, allowing the divine law to express abundance for both. Love and wisdom. Some fear that too much love invites exploitation. Confusing love with civility is a mistake. Divine love includes wisdom. Supporting abuse perpetuates the illusion of separation in the abuser. A mother loving her child does not hand over a knife. She keeps it safe and teaches proper use. Likewise, one practicing divine love can say no firmly and silently, without hatred. Tone decides whether negation builds or destroys. The resentful shout no and build walls. The loving, firm heart declares, "I do not allow this conduct," while maintaining vision of the other, giving the offender opportunity to correct or withdraw naturally. Love and prosperity. Wealth flows where circulation exists. Greed constricts channels. Fear of scarcity poisons commerce. A small business paying meager wages creates scarcity that returns as poor sales. Conversely, one treating employees justly invokes love as a causal force, creating loyal customers, as trust is transmitted through product and service. Philadelphia baker example. Blessing each loaf with healthful intention, he doubled orders within months without changing the recipe. Neighbors noted the bread tasted different, unknowingly sensing the baker's elevated essence. Love and health. Prolonged anger increases adrenaline, alters blood pH, and favors ulcers. Spiritual law goes further. Love restores a sense of unity, reorganizes cellular masters, and corrects autonomic impulses. Example: an elderly woman with uncontrollable hypertension reconciled with her daughter after 20 years of estrangement. Her tension normalized without medication changes. The inner life governs chemistry. Love is the supreme regulator. Method to cultivate love. Love exists in all but requires cultivation. Concentric circle. Exercises. Week 1. Extend deliberate love to something easy, a tree, a bird, a pleasant memory. Feel warmth and declare, God's life in this being is good and I bless it. Week 2. Expand to close friends. Week 3. Neutral acquaintances, mail carrier, shopkeeper. Week 4. Difficult people. Like violin muscles strengthening with scales, the spiritual heart gains elasticity through diverse directions. By week 6, a spontaneous desire for good arises even at news of wrongdoing, prompting creative prayer rather than anger. This collective emission forms a social atmosphere restraining evil before it manifests. Love and justice. Some fear love undermines divine justice. The opposite is true. Justice emanating from love is exact, flowing from cause and effect. Loving the transgressor does not prevent lessons. It ensures correction is sufficient, not cruel. Wise judges embody this, offering proportionate sentences, opportunity for amendment, community work, restitution. Love with justice prevents recurrence and reduces societal cost. Practical application. Every situation lacking love lacks the key to resolution. Ask, where is love missing? Where do I hold judgment? Identifying the gap, pour in conscious love, blessing, gratitude, and service, as a welder pours solder into a joint. Wait. The structure realigns because love is causal, permeating atoms and ordering conduct, not mere moral perfume. Biblical patriarchs, prophets, and civil reformers knew this intuitively. Mental science articulates it in replicable terms for any individual. 7-day exercise. Each night, review the day's encounters. Choose the face that evoked irritation. Visualize it enveloped in rosy light, a universal symbol of active love, and say, I bless the good in you and release all resistance. I free you and free myself. Imagine a future scene of cordiality without forcing details. Upon waking, bless in advance all whom you meet. God's love walks before me and harmonizes this day. Record small surprises, unexpected greetings, smooth transactions, digestive relief. 7 days suffice to show that scientifically applied love fulfills the law more effectively than coercion or cunning. Closing affirmation. Father of immense goodness, we now recognize that your love is the first cause, the very substance and glorious end of all existence. We surrender our thoughts, words, and actions to this love. May it flow unimpeded through our minds, heal our bodies, multiply our resources, and bless every being touched by our intention. Thus we manifest the law in fullness, and the world, sensing this wave of abundance, responds with peace, health, and prosperity for all. Amen. Chapter 10. Reasoned Faith. When Jesus proclaimed that a mountain could be moved, he did not appeal to Oriental fantasy or the preacher's hyperbole. He was describing a literal operation of universal laws that humanity is only beginning to translate into scientific language. The mountain may be a rebellious tumor lodged in the peritoneum, a mortgage threatening the home, or a psychic habit inherited across generations. The visible texture of the obstacle matters little when one understands that the mind, embracing the certainty that the principle operates without flaw, dictates to the subconscious an order that cells, finances, or external circumstances obey with geometric docility. For this faith to function in modern life, with its crowded streets, urgent telegrams, and skeptical editorials, it must be anchored in clear logic, not vaporous emotion. Reasoned faith resembles not an acrobat's leap into darkness, but the engineer's confident step on a bridge whose calculations have been verified. The bridge differs from sentimental credulity, as solid gold differs from the deceitful shine of mica. Much harm has been done to both soul and intellect by discourses presenting faith as blind abandonment of reason, implying that the believer must extinguish the lamp of understanding to please God. Such a division is impossible. The God who designed neuronal synapses and the number pi could not demand the renunciation of thinking to grant favors. The birth of reasoned faith. Reasoned faith arises precisely from tracing with careful attention the line connecting cause and effect in daily experience. The student observes that thoughts fertilized by emotion crystallize into facts, and that the identity I am imprinted upon the X summons external equivalents. Repeated observation generates a sense of certainty, and cultivated certainty becomes faith, resting not in childish longing but in evidence accumulated through careful attention. Yes, reasoned faith is a legitimate child of the metaphysical science we have developed. It accepts the premise that God is absolute good, verifies this in small experiments, and, after initial results, dares to tackle greater projects. A novice chemist does not begin synthesizing complex vaccines. He starts mixing simple reagents to observe colors and precipitates. Similarly, the aspirant of reasoned faith exercises it first in matters the mind classifies as small: finding a parking space, securing an appointment, calming minor anxiety. Record the desire, affirm the pertinent truth, release the image, and observe. Within days, correlations will appear that doubt labels coincidences. Within weeks, accumulated coincidences will overturn doubt like a gale felling a rusted fence. Reason, seeing the pattern repeated, renders its verdict. The law is real. Faith then ceases to be a posture. It becomes a mental habit, as spontaneous as breathing. The farmer trusts germination not from blind belief, but because thousands of mornings have proven the process faithful. Rain may delay, worms may attack, but the seed, given minimal conditions, will sprout. Likewise, the student practicing spiritual science sees health emerge where diagnoses were grim, income appear where loss threatened ruin, and above all, serenity arise where chronic fear once prevailed. The 3 steps to structured certainty. Knowledge provides the guiding idea. God is good, the mind is causal, love is unifying energy. Without this foundation, faith becomes reckless superstition. Experimentation tests the idea practically. Form an affirmation, visualize the goal, bless, and release it. Begin with low-resistance territory, small payments, minor relief, appointment scheduling. Record data honestly. Testimony completes the cycle. Report to your own heart and eventually to other seekers how the law responded. Testimony reinforces knowledge. The idea backed by evidence roots deeper, becoming operative belief. This creates an ascending spiral. Each cycle expands faith, allowing experiments of greater magnitude, and each new victory strengthens the spiral. Understanding doubt. Doubt is not a supernatural enemy. It is a habit of negative thinking, born of prior experiences when desires were frustrated through ignorance of the law. To dissolve it, employ the same reason it invokes. Analyze objectively how often fear failed to improve the situation. A merchant fearing bankruptcy through sleepless nights induces errors through fatigue. A patient fearing relapse weakens immune defenses, facilitating precisely what he fears. Reason demonstrates that worry produces no solutions. This realization weakens the authority of doubt. Practice in affirmation and gratitude produces verifiable positive results. Evidence counterbalances evidence, tilting the scale toward faith. Over time, doubt appears as the echo of outdated teaching, not an authoritative voice. Examined calmly, it dissipates when no fresh argument arises. Faith and action. Reasoned faith does not exclude material action. It includes it naturally. A farmer who plants with certainty does not remain idle. He waters, weeds, and protects his crop. But without anguish, knowing the unseen law guarantees the outcome. Likewise, the student affirming abundance prepares balance sheets, negotiates prudently, and attends to clients. The sick person declaring divine life follows medical instructions and nourishes the body. Action arises not from panic but from inspired intuition. The luminous mind guides the right means, and the means fulfill joyfully, not tensely. This collaboration between the invisible and the visible unites heaven and earth within the individual. Examples. Health. A surgeon recounted a complex fracture that consolidated slowly. The patient, instructed in these principles, affirmed, "Tissues now obey the law of perfect order." Cooperating fully with asepsis and medical care, radiographs after 3 weeks showed unusual progress, which the doctor attributed, with honest surprise, to the patient's exceptional attitude. Finance. A customs officer facing layoffs at age 50 adopted the affirmation, "I am the continuous expression of practical value. The perfect place calls for me now." He updated his CV, sent 3 letters, and maintained the image of himself signing a well-paid contract. 2 weeks later, a Chilean shipping line opened an office needing an expert, and he obtained the position at a higher salary. Asked whether his faith was blind, he replied, "No, it was logical. I knew my value and that the universe does not waste it. That knowledge fit like a key in the correct lock." Social implications. Communities dominated by corrosive skepticism experience economic depression, rising crime, and worn-out politics. Citizens projecting shadows contribute to a collective cloud-stifling initiative. Conversely, communities where leaders and workers share a vision grounded in past successes construct hospitals, dams, and universities. This is not patriotic rhetoric, but mental law multiplied by millions. Cultivating reasoned faith is thus civic service. Each individual thought of certainty raises the moral bar of the city. 10,000 such thoughts reshape nations. 40-day practice plan. Choose a goal whose achievement seems impossible within your old scheme. Write logical reasons why the law can fulfill it. Divine affiliation, verified cases, personal aptitude. Formulate a short present tense affirmation. The perfect solution exists, and I accept it now. Dedicate 10 minutes to visualization from the goal. Chapter 7 method. Act daily according to a rising intuition, recording steps and results. In the evening, review favorable evidence and give thanks. Repeat the cycle for 40 days. Doubt diminishes, the goal draws near, eventually seeming almost inevitable. If not fully realized, extend to 50 or 60 days. Each extension brings refreshment, not fatigue, for reasoned faith rests upon solid foundation. Faith as spiritual science. Faith is the spiritual equivalent of the scientific method. Hypothesize, God is present good. Experiment in reality and affirm and visualize, act. Formulate verified law, all thought aligned with good manifests, producing certainty that dissolves doubt without theatrical gestures. No mountain of oratory is required. Sober, objective words suffice, as precise as a surveyor's theodolite. This certainty is what Jesus called knowing the truth. Not believing the improbable, but experiencing the real. And this experience is available to every reader who applies these principles with honest discipline. Closing affirmation. Father of immutable light, we give thanks that the faith you infuse in our minds is not a leap into the void, but a step on solid rock. We affirm that your law upholds our plans, directs our affections, and strengthens our bodies. We renounce inherited fear. We see the path clearly. We act with calm confidence. Your certainty moves our mountains, transforming them into fertile plains where health, prosperity, and peace flourish. So it is by the indestructible logic of your love. Chapter 11. Forgiveness and Transmutation. The human subconscious can be likened to a crystalline lake whose surface reflects the sky when calm, but whose depths, if heavy objects are thrown in, become turbid with sediments that slowly release harmful substances and disrupt the entire ecosystem. These objects are resentments, guilt, reproaches, and chronic fears. The disturbance manifests in recurrent illnesses, family friction, and economic frustration, phenomena the individual attributes to fate, unaware that they arise from forgotten psychic deposits. Cleaning these residues is not an occasional act, like removing dead leaves in autumn, but a systematic process of forgiveness and transmutation. Forgiveness, to neutralize the emotional charge associated with painful memories. Transmutation, to redirect the liberated energy toward constructive impulses, reopening the divine channel. Until this drainage occurs, any affirmation of prosperity or health encounters an internal blockage that the mental law interprets as a contradictory command. Like a dammed river, the consciousness retains living waters that could nourish the fields, and in stagnation fosters microorganisms of failure. Anatomy of resentment. Resentment arises when the personal self judges that it has been wronged, offended, or deprived of a rightful good. The mind records the scene in its emotional archive, and each time the memory surfaces, it reproduces the chemistry of grievance. Adrenaline rises, muscles tense, breathing becomes shallow. The biological body is a faithful archivist. It processes only what the mind feeds it. Anger produces acid. Understanding produces endorphins. Modern psychologists speak of nuance, but the Bible taught this millennia ago. Hatred damages the bones. The problem is not the initial irritation, a common reaction, but keeping it as a toxic relic. Here enters forgiveness not as moral absolution of the offender, but as a hygienic decision, refusal to drink the same daily poison of memory. The mind that forgives does not justify another's conduct, it simply renounces attachment. It is a gesture of legitimate self-love that places the stone of rage outside the lake, allowing the spirit's current to reoxygenate deep waters. Methodical forgiveness. To achieve this cleansing, method is required, for unlike a physical container, the subconscious does not release sediment with a single shake. I propose the technique of exhaustive inventory. Dedicate an uninterrupted afternoon to listing names, dates, or situations that still cause emotional sting. The teacher who embarrassed you, the partner who stole capital, the relative who humiliated you in childhood. Include guilt over wrong decisions or silent shame that torments in secret. Do not judge whether the offense deserves forgiveness. Record it exactly as memory provides. Upon completing the list, observe the magnitude of energy invested in holding ancient wounds. Note that not a penny of that energy produced value, health, or joy. All has been unproductive consumption. This intellectual acknowledgement prepares the next step, the liberating affirmation. Pronounce name by name. I forgive N, I forgive myself. I release all residual feelings to the law. Follow this with a visualization of each scene enveloped in white light, dissolving images like film exposed to intense illumination. The first round touches the heart. The second, practiced over 7 consecutive nights, loosens older knots. A third, if necessary, dissolves lightly adhered residues. Common objections. Some say, I will forgive when the other changes or apologizes. This condition reveals a misunderstanding. Waiting for external repair is like expecting a river to cleanse itself while still throwing in garbage. Forgiveness is a unilateral initiative. It cleans the mind that grants it, and in doing so creates a vibrational environment in which the other, if willing, can rectify more easily. Those who cling to offense maintain a psychic link with the aggressor and remain trapped by their conduct. Who forgives cuts the invisible cord and regains inner freedom. Upon liberation, one discovers that the fortifications built for protection were in truth a prison. Example, Eloy, a merchant ruined by his brother-in-law's fraud, suffered chronic gastritis. After practicing inventory and affirmation for a month, he noticed digestive relief and, to both their surprise, received partial repayment of the debt without demanding it. He said, "When I stopped hating him, he breathed differently and could take responsibility." Monetary restitution is not always guaranteed, but inner relief and openness to new opportunities are constants. Transmutation. Transmutation is the positive phase of the same phenomenon. Once toxic emotion is neutralized, the liberated energy is redirected toward elevated objectives. The medieval alchemist sought to convert lead into gold. The metaphysician converts trauma into service. One who suffered childhood neglect upon forgiving discovers compassion to help other orphans. One who endured workplace persecution cleanses and develops enterprises that provide just employment. One who experienced prolonged illness transforms the experience into understanding that consoles the sick. The law wastes no experience, it recycles it. Karma, understood as the effect of mental causes, becomes a tool, a path of useful expression. Forgiveness is a hinge that turns meaning. Without it, wounds fester. With it, they heal and become muscle-propelling character evolution. Subtle obstacles. Unconscious guilt and self-blame. An individual may list forgiveness granted but still carry a strict tribunal condemning past errors. Such guilt acts as a thermostat, limiting higher abundance because the mind sabotages projects contradicting its verdict. Use the same technique, inventory, affirmation, visualization, emphasizing, I forgive myself, release and accept the innocence God grants me. Revictimization, reliving forgiven events to gain social sympathy. The subconscious cannot distinguish motive. It reproduces the old film with the same chemistry. Once forgiven, cease morbid narration. Share testimony to edify, but without dramatization. Emotional tugging signals the need to repeat cleansing exercises. The mind, like a garden, requires regular weeding. Seeds of resentment may sprout anew, but roots are weaker and easily removed. Scientific prayer and practice. Forgiveness is a prerequisite for effective decree. Jesus expressed this arithmetically. If you bring your gift to the altar and remember that your brother has something against you, first go and be reconciled, then present your gift. Translated mentally. If resentment remains, the energy of affirmation divides. The subconscious obeys the stronger vibration, often resentment, charged by years. Many repeat decrees without results because their emotional deposit contradicts the verbal command. When the channel is free, the current flows with astonishing speed, explaining reports of sudden healings upon forgiveness. It is not whimsical miracle, it is removal of blockage. The 21-day method. Week 1. Inventory and nightly affirmation. Week 2. Review the list each morning. Imagine golden light flowing down the spine and extending like a river over each name or situation until warmth is felt in the plexus. Week 3. Each time the mind recalls a forgiven topic, respond, I bless and release. For new offenses during the day, apply the formula for 30 seconds immediately. Upon completion, notice emotional lightness and especially openness to new ideas of prosperity. Many discover dormant talents precisely when energy once trapped in resentment is freed. Collective function. Forgiveness has transcendental collective function. Wars are often born from cultural memories of humiliation, venerated as relics. Without transmutation, offenses become rancorous hymns. With forgiveness, they turn into lessons preventing repetition. Working on one's subconscious contributes to the subconscious of the people, a drop in the ocean. Individual cleansing is not escapism, it is miniature global pacification. A teacher who releases resentment creates harmony in the classroom. A judge ruling without animosity brings invisible relief to the city. The future of civilization depends as much on individual practice as on international congresses. Affirmative prayer. Father of infinite mercy, I recognize your life as one in me and all beings. I now declare that any shadow of resentment, guilt, or grievance is exposed to the light of your love and dissolves without residue. I forgive every person, situation, or thought I once perceived as enemy. I forgive myself for every error committed in ignorance. I transmute this energy into service, health and prosperity for all. My mind is a clean channel. Your good flows freely and abundantly. Thank you, for this is fact in your eternal now. So it is, so it remains. Amen. Chapter 12. Spiritual Prosperity. The word prosperity in its Latin root, prosperare, means to make things move forward with hope. While most confine it to coin balances or property expansion, spiritual science regards it as a state of consciousness in which good flows without stagnation, taking the form of money, job opportunities, fruitful relationships, and above all, an abundant inner sense of sufficiency. Money is merely a certificate of services rendered and services possible, a piece of paper that, by collective convention, activates exchange. When the mind aligns with divine law, that certificate arrives in just proportion because the invisible circulation of thought supports it. If the mind resists through fear or greed, bills slip through the fingers like water or pile up with the odor of stagnant dams, soon to rot. Understanding this principle requires abandoning the superstition that poverty inherently dignifies or that wealth intrinsically degrades. Neither is true. Poverty born of ignorance generates bitterness. Wealth without universal purpose breeds anxiety. Balance lies in recognizing the spirit as the limited source that distributes itself according to the idea the individual holds of their abundance, and in letting monetary symbols circulate like blood that lubricates the social body without clotting or hemorrhaging arteries. The mental architecture of prosperity. Everything begins with the concept one harbors about God, if perceived as an intermittent giver, distributing blessings with changing humor. The subconscious mirrors that intermittence in delayed salaries, bounce checks, or seasonal businesses that fail. When instead the mind recognizes God as a continuous flow of good, the subconscious reproduces continuity, chained contracts, ever-fresh inventiveness, clients arriving before the counter is empty. This correlation is not esoteric magic. It follows the logic of mental law. The primary image, generous principle or stingy principle, is projected onto the screen of personal economy. Hence, the first task of the student is to review their intimate theology. Do you secretly believe that money taints the spiritual hand? Do you suspect that asking for a raise is depriving a colleague? Such beliefs, sedimented from childhood sermons and fatalistic proverbs, form a dam that diverts the universal current. The river of life does not resent, but it seeks open channels. If closed, it bypasses obstacles and fertilizes others' fields. Conscious circulation. The second pillar of spiritual prosperity is the attitude of conscious circulation. Money, like blood, renews itself when it flows. Hoarding it creates financial hypertension that eventually erupts as inner devaluation, fear disguised as greed, or compulsive spending acting as corrective hemorrhage. The prudent student manages resources but does not idolize coins. Every dollar spent joyfully returns multiplied, bearing the vibratory signature of the giver. To practice this law, I propose the mental tithe method. Before income touches the account, set aside 10% for inspired purpose, light work, direct aid, cultural investment, and bless the remaining 90% with the affirmation, flow freely and return in a growing torrent. This is not mystical arithmetic. It trains the subconscious to perceive abundance even after parting with a portion. Initially, apprehension arises. After 3 months of disciplined practice, serene certainty emerges accompanied by unexpected income, forgotten tax refunds, returning clients, minor inventions patented. Observed faithfully, the mental tithe is a seed teaching the internal soil to produce limitlessly. Proper use of commercial imagination. Many declare they desire prosperity yet entertain thoughts of market crashes, mass closures, and bankers' conspiracies. This dark exercise, repeated daily, functions as a negative affirmation of scarcity and impresses itself as faithfully as positive affirmations. The creative mind does not distinguish irony. Every emotional picture is a command. Direct imagination towards scenes of prosperous circulation, flowing goods, letters of gratitude, ascending balance sheets, not as childish fantasy, but to imprint the model the law will reproduce. Spend 5 minutes each morning feeling, not merely thinking, gratitude for money already circulating and for the exact sum meeting the day's needs. In the evening, thank the unseen opportunities with conviction that the divine idea works in shadows to manifest in due time. Within weeks, the mind adopts an optimistic tone, which does not ignore difficulties, but learns to expect solutions, awakening new inventiveness, practice, sales strategies, alliances, or night study that expands competencies. This is prosperity. It no longer depends on heavenly lottery. It sprouts as the logical consequence of a person thinking as steward of God's wealth. Prosperity with purpose. Prosperity without purpose becomes unbearable. Divine law does not support mere accumulation. It promotes expansion of service. Those who earn more must serve more, or soon the flow escapes through legal, medical, or familial leaks. The philanthropic banker financing libraries sees their portfolio grow almost arithmetically. The speculator who strangles small farmers discovers that plagues or tax reforms erase numbers. Not mystical revenge, but balance. A unique mind distributes resources where they multiply good. Before asking for a raise, ask, how will I improve others' lives with this extra? Clear answers, educating children, sponsoring scholarships, upgrading machinery to prevent accidents, attract the opportunity for gain. Without answer, the request dissipates. Relationship with self-esteem. The subconscious pays exactly the rate the individual believes they deserve. If one repeats, I am not enough, life provides a proportional salary. The remedy is not arrogance, but recognition of intrinsic dignity. A child of God deserves abundant provision to fulfill their cosmic role. Affirm for tomorrow, I am an expression of divine wealth and I receive without limit to give without fear. Re-educate emotions sedimented in poverty. Those in modest neighborhoods can signal readiness for greater good through small gestures. Painting a door, tending a windowsill, ironing a shirt carefully. Neighbors notice, recommend services, opportunities expand. The social elevator begins within the heart before reflecting in external promotions. Ethical objections and cooperation. If everyone seeks prosperity, no clash arises. Law of abundance responds. The universe has sufficient matter and energy to dignify each inhabitant. Apparent scarcity arises from competition paradigm, not real deficit. An inventor creating a vaccine does not take from the farmer. They add health that enables better production. Similarly, personal prosperity adds value to the community if grounded in service. The market is not a zero-sum game, but an expandable ocean. Each new boat does not subtract water from others. Intelligent governance prevents collisions. Spiritual science teaches cooperative competition. Compete with your own mediocrity, cooperate with others' talents. Emotional hygiene of wealth. Fear of loss is worse than loss itself because it paralyzes initiative. The market may fall, but one who trusts the mental source reinvents themselves. Practice the following immunization. When reading crisis headlines declare, "God's substance is inexhaustible, I keep my channel open," then ask, what service does the world demand today? Answering generates products or skills that recession cannot suppress. During the Great Depression, many rediscovered crafts replacing imported goods, forging durable industries. A mind convinced of abundance detects opportunity in ruins, like Gardener Bumus in fallen leaves. Affirmative prayer for financial matters. Combine studied elements: silence, identification, fulfilled image, gratitude. Example, a bill is due, cash is short. Spend 30 minutes in calm. Affirm, I am an inexhaustible supply. This obligation is met promptly and the flow continues. Visualize the receipt marked paid. Feel light, release. Act with order, call whom you must, plan reasonably, offer additional service. I have witnessed bills settled the same day, forgotten bonds found in drawers, friends returning forgotten loans. The universe possesses infinite channels. Prayer opens the mental door for any of them. Conclusion. Spiritual prosperity is not a privilege of few, nor a matter of luck. It is a mental current ordered according to one's vision of God, oneself, and the service one renders. It flows where fear does not block it, where imagination paints shared good, and where gratitude keeps the valve open. Money is neither heresy nor salvation. It is a neutral messenger obeying the quality of the charge. Train yourself, therefore, to love it as a fine horse, with respect, without idolatry, guiding it toward noble goals. Life, pleased, adds paths, companions, and means. Father of unlimited abundance, we acknowledge your eternal flow circulating now through our minds and affairs. We affirm that every useful idea finds support. Every honorable service receives fair reward. Every honest need is met in perfect order. We release all fear of scarcity. We bless every coin entering and leaving our hands and declare your wealth manifesting for the good of all. So it is, so it shall be, so it remains. Chapter 13, Health and Regeneration. Contemporary medicine, which scrutinizes the dance of the nucleus and the membrane under the microscope, confirms day by day what prophets intuited without a scalpel. The body is a perpetual procession of atoms, a river that never repeats the same drop. Blood cells renew in weeks, intestinal lining cells in days, and even the seemingly immutable bony framework is entirely replaced over a decade or two. If the organism is thus a work in progress and not a rigid statue, it is logical that the mind can intervene in its architecture, ordering the living bricks with the authority the architect exercises over the workers. Yet to achieve this, it is not enough to vaguely wish for better health. One must provide the subconscious with a finished blueprint of perfect divine order, engrave it with persistent images, sustain it with congruent emotion, and shield it from discordant impressions whose poison, if it infiltrates, would sabotage the biological scaffolding. The purpose of this chapter is to explain the mechanics of conscious regeneration, based on laws that the laboratory tangibly senses, and to present a disciplined method for renewing each cell under the guidance of truth without conflicting with official remedies, but also without submitting to their partial view when they declare irreparable what the universal mind finds as simple as weaving a new petal on a lily. Premise 1. Cells reproduce the idea that governs them. Just as the artisan follows a blueprint, protoplasm obeys the mental vibration impressed upon it. Invisible but real, like the musical score guiding violinists in an orchestra. If that vibration is saturated with fear, I inherited a weak heart. Age takes its toll. The tissues read the command and manufacture weakness accordingly. When instead, the mind offers the image of vigor, heart pumping majestically, joints flexible as reeds, the subconscious translates that score into enzymes, hormones, and nerve currents that restore what seemed lost. Some object. How could a thought weld bone or dissolve infection? They forget that, even in classical physiology, the body produces antibodies, growth hormones, and repairing substances in response to electrical and chemical stimuli from the brain. We affirm that the brain, in turn, listens to the mind, which, illuminated by spiritual intuition, can dictate a melody of harmony that the flesh eagerly performs. Premise 2. Clear-lived, goal-oriented imagery. What type of image promotes regeneration? It must be clear, concrete, experienced as already achieved, just as in the chapter on creative imagination, but now applied to the cellular territory. The patient does not see themselves trying to walk without a cane. They see themselves already ascending the hill, breathing fresh air, greeting a friend behind them. No hesitant muttering, "I feel a little less ill." Instead, they hear the calm signature. Every fiber radiates God's strength. For those who appreciate symbols, imagine a temple. The cells are workers replacing dull bricks with gleaming marble. Scaffolds rise silently as epithelial carpenters place new beams beneath the skin. 5 minutes of this visualization at dawn and 5 before sleep accomplish more than 1,000 detailed anatomy lessons, because the subconscious feeds on compact images, not academic treatises. Premise 3. Gratitude as catalytic emotion. But the image alone requires a catalyst emotion. Otherwise, it remains like a blank canvas. The ideal feeling is anticipatory gratitude, proving to the universe that restoration is believed complete before it is physically sensed. By thanking, the patient convinces the subconscious that the order has been accepted, neutralizing any residue of anxiety, like a spark igniting the precise mixture of air and fuel. To cultivate sincere gratitude, do more than repeat hollow words. Recall a pleasant memory, a childhood afternoon, the scent of freshly baked bread, a melody that always warms the heart, and let that warmth permeate the health image. The physiological effect of gratitude is well known: dilating vessels, oxygenating tissues, regulating the autonomic nervous system. Aligning emotion and mental picture forms a closed circuit that no germ can interfere with, as it encounters a vibratory field incompatible with its nature. Premise 4. Eliminate contradictory impressions. Modern minds are bombarded with news of epidemics, cancers, and mortality statistics. When encountering such reports, one should not deny them with childish obstinacy, but translate them into instant prayer. This discord does not belong to me. Life for all. This frees one from emotional contagion. Avoid conversations of continuous complaint. If physical withdrawal is impossible, retreat mentally behind an inner veil of silence and repeat gently, "I am divine order." Far from selfishness, this protects your health and the interlocutor's atmosphere, as life-focused thought is antiseptic, sterilizing harmful words. Premise 5. Coordinated use of external medicine. Some misinterpret faith and discard material remedies, trying to prove trust. Others, enslaved to chemistry, ridicule the mind. Truth is a bridge. Pharmaceutical preparations are coarse vehicles the spiritual intelligence may employ. Blessing the wisdom that inspired the researcher adds invisible potency to the formula. Entering surgery with inner calm facilitates skilled hands, reduces hemorrhage, accelerates healing. Advanced surgeons, in non-metaphysical terms, attest that trusting patients heal at remarkable rates. What is called a miracle is simply the joint action of mental law and physical intervention, freed of psychic resistance. Practical method: the cellular cycle. Most tissues renew in 30 days. During that month, select an organ or system, liver, skin, digestive tract, and formulate the affirmation: "Cells of my organ, you are living temples of God's life. I multiply you now in perfect order." Each morning visualize white light descending from the crown to the organ, saturating it with rhythmic pulses like a piston pumping fresh oil. After 10 minutes, close with gratitude. Record any subtle improvements: skin tone, lighter digestion, deeper sleep. After 30 days, move to the next system, maintaining brief reviews of the previous to prevent regression. This simple procedure has restored energy to tuberculous miners, removed stubborn warts, reduced palpable nodules later confirmed as regressing by radiologists. No surprise, cells guided by a higher plan obey as ships obey the telegraph officer on the bridge. Integration of emotional hygiene. The body is not an island. It depends on moral currents. Resentments, guilt, and anxieties tense the solar plexus, slow digestion, acidify blood, and eventually lodge in joints or arterial walls. Emotional cleansing is essential hygiene, not mere pious decoration. A resentful person reciting health affirmations sows wheat and chaff. The harvest will be confused. Coherence of thought, feeling, and action is required. Those who forgive, love, and trust offer osteoblasts, leukocytes, and neurons an optimal atmosphere, eliciting chemical precision beyond any school manual. Love in times of trial is more potent than quinine, reinforcing the interior and rooting peace microbes cannot withstand. Illustrative case. In 1947, a violinist with chronic gastric ulcer showed improvement from dietary treatment, yet flare-ups returned under stress. We discovered latent resentment against a critic who had ridiculed his debut years earlier. Introducing a cycle of forgiveness and visualization of the gastric mucosa as pink silk bathed in golden light, endoscopy confirmed near-total healing in 2 months. The doctor admitted surprise. The violinist concurred. By imagining internal tissue as smooth as his violin, old tensions dissolved. Clear image, noble emotion, physiological result. Regeneration of severe injuries. Can the mind regenerate amputated tissue? Biology recognizes this in salamanders. We do not discount the human equivalent under higher understanding. Meanwhile, many internal injuries deemed irreversible have yielded to persistent practice. Each generation expands the frontier. Faith need not be measured by another's rule. Practice and bear witness. Nightly reprogramming ritual. Before sleep, lie on your back, right hand over the heart, left hand over the plexus. Breathe deeply and declare mentally, "While my body rests, God's life renews every cell. I awaken refreshed and vigorous." Visualize a luminous dawn, hear imaginary birdsong, and surrender to sleep. This command penetrates the subconscious as wakefulness wanes, synchronizing nocturnal chemistry, growth hormone, and tissue repair. Insomniacs report that after a few nights the mind calms. Factory workers awaken without morning heaviness. The body accepts the order delivered before it closes its gates. Conclusion. Conscious regeneration integrates perfect order imagery, emotive gratitude, protection against discord, collaboration with physical means, daily discipline, ethical cleansing, and nightly decree. This is not mystical trickery. It is the coherent application of studied principles. Following them, one transforms the body into a temple of spirit, a stained glass through which divine light flows. It does not guarantee earthly eternity, as the soul transcends the flesh, but it prolongs life, dispels unnecessary ailments, and demonstrates to the community that the mind of Christ is not abstract theory, but practical medicine, capable of turning a sick room into a workshop of joyful service. Father of indestructible life, we now proclaim that your breath penetrates every cell, replace worn matter with radiant tissue, harmonize functions with eternal rhythm. We give thanks for total restoration. We feel your vigor unfolding in bones, blood, and nerves. We radiate this certainty to every sick person seeking relief. In your name, we are channels of health and regeneration. So it is, so it shall be, so it remains. Chapter 14, Transforming Circumstances. Those who have understood that every cell of the body obeys thought can no longer believe that the fabric of their surroundings is someone else's weaving. The same law that governs the lung governs the workshop, the home, the neighborhood, and the nation. Everything visible, wood, brick, bank balances, the emotional climate in the office, is a projection of the collective mind, whose units are individual minds. Thus, transforming external circumstances does not require crude manipulation. It requires acting at the internal cause, reconfiguring the image that sustains the structure. Many despair before a hostile job, a dreary neighborhood, or an unjust government, and launch feverish campaigns that may produce temporary fixes. Yet, if the mental matrix is neglected, the same chaos returns, dressed in new characters. Spiritual science teaches another strategy. Raise the focus of attention until you can conceive with clarity and convincing emotion the perfect scene already realized. Maintain it with serene perseverance, and then proceed with the action inspired by the Spirit. When one acts in this way, the surrounding reality adjusts with surprising precision, like photosensitive paper revealing the latent image as soon as it receives proper light. Principle of correspondence. To operate this reconfiguration deliberately, apply the principle of correspondence. All that appears outside reflects something operating inside. If the office overflows with gossip, there exists some habit of criticism within the mind. If the street in front of the house accumulates trash, a neglected corner persists in thought. If the business suffers late-paying clients, perhaps there is a feeling of moral debt not yet cleared. This is not neurotic guilt, it is creative responsibility. The student who observes external discord asks without reproach, what internal pattern sustains this? Once the root idea, envy, laxity, fear of loss is discovered, it is replaced by its opposite, appreciation, order, confidence. This substitution is carried out silently through affirmation and visualization. My mind is a channel of harmony. My environment responds with discipline and joy. With consistent practice, murmurers find a new target. Streets receive spontaneous cleaning crews, and clients settle accounts. It is not magic, it is vibratory coherence. Tools for transformation. The master picture. The student dedicates an afternoon to paint or describe in words the external condition exactly as desired. For the home, luminous walls, cordial neighbors, blooming garden. For the workplace, a department where collaboration and efficiency reign. The picture omits obstacles or personnel changes. It focuses solely on the completed result. Place it in a private folder and review each morning for 3 minutes, feeling it is already real. Then store it, avoiding discussion with skeptics, and continue daily work with vigilant disposition. Any inspiration leading back to the picture, a conversation, a rental offer, a new technique, is accepted and executed. Example: a seamstress applied this method to move from a dim alley to a sunny apartment without raising rent, and even converted a chaotic workshop into a disciplined studio by introducing soft music during the day. The master picture had predisposed her mind to notice opportunities that had previously remained invisible. Proactive words. When entering a room where disputes occurred, the student quietly pronounces, "I declare the peace of God here." Upon receiving bureaucratic correspondence, place a hand over it and affirm, "Divine intelligence opens the easy path." Inert molecules are not deaf. Mental vibration, united with the spoken word, organizes subtle fields, what physicists now call probability waves, and the situation evolves with less friction. A postal employee who blessed daily sacks of mail observed the office install mechanized sorting, reducing lost items. His supervisor attributed it to technical innovation, unaware that the latent cause lay in silent prayer inspiring the request for budget. Complex situations. Some circumstances require mediating action, conflicts between departments, family disputes, political tension. The student does not point fingers. Instead, they imagine a luminous circle encompassing all parties and declare, "The one mind of God harmonizes these interests. An equitable solution arises now." Then, if appropriate, offer an informative suggestion or propose a dialogue. The energy released by this vision quiets hostility and supports practical words spoken. Example: a lawyer applied this method for 15 minutes daily over 3 years and achieved an extrajudicial settlement in a long-standing dispute. On the day of the final hearing, a previously unwilling company agreed to conciliation. The attorney understood that the executive's minds had tuned to the wave he maintained. Action and responsibility. Transforming circumstances does not mean evasion. If a house suffers rising damp, physical repair is essential. Many fix a wall only to see the stain return because the mental pattern, lack of clarity, self-neglect, remains. Visible action without change in cause is like painting over rust. The intelligent approach: repair, affirm internal cleanliness, hire the worker, and maintain mental order without blaming the climate or landlord, as complaint reinstalls the image of deterioration. Once the attitude shifts, plaster dries and harmony prevails. Large-scale influence. Some students ask, how can one influence massive circumstances, inflation, urban violence, where individual impact seems minimal? The answer lies in the law of group resonance. A clear thought, sustained with altruistic emotion, influences the collective field beyond kilometers and languages. History records examples. Nationwide days of prayer or acts of collective goodwill have unexpectedly reduced crime or promoted reform. Practice a daily 10-minute omission. Visualize your nation bathed in blue light of indivisible justice. Affirm. Divine wisdom guides our leaders, peace reigns in our streets, provision covers all needs. It may seem a drop in the ocean, but joined with thousands of invisible drops, it forms an underground current that erupts into legislative reform or community programs dismantling gangs. Enduring transformation begins in silent interior before publication in the official gazette. Alignment with the law of service. Coherence with service is decisive. Attempting to manipulate circumstances for personal gain at the expense of others, even if successful temporarily, will be rebalanced by divine law, often unexpectedly. Therefore, the principle: if the goal does not bless all involved, rethink it. When the master picture includes the common good, doors open without force, and transformation flows like dawn, dispersing shadows effortlessly. 40-day reconfiguration method. Day 1. Draft the master picture of the circumstance to improve. Days 240. Dedicate 10 minutes each morning to visualize the picture, feel gratitude, and pronounce the central affirmation. This ideal is already active in the visible plane. At the end of each day, record signs, data, encounters, or improvements in someone's mood. If obstacles arise, declare them a bridge. This delay reveals a hidden benefit for me. At cycle completion, compare external reality to the initial description. Rarely identical, but it will reflect the improved essence. I have observed ruined workshops become prosperous, cold marriages regain tenderness, and mediocre students graduate with honors following this plan. The law responds to constancy, not bursts of enthusiasm. Affirmation. Father of infinite order, we now recognize that your mind designs our circumstances, and by aligning our thought with your perfect plan, every external condition reconfigures in harmony. We affirm that our place is filled with light, our work achieves useful success, and the society we serve progresses toward justice and peace. Thank you that our visions, sustained in your name, imprint on matter without delay and bring good to all. So it is, so it shall be, so it remains. Chapter 15. Service, Projecting Divine Thought. The preceding work in this book has placed the student at the pinnacle of their own consciousness. They know that the principle operates through their I am, that imagination generates molds, that the word precipitates forms, that love transmutes discord, that reason sustains construction, that forgiveness clears channels, that prosperity flows, that cells obey, and that circumstances reconfigure when the internal cause receives a new program. One might then think that the goal lies in individual self-perception, healthy body, comfortable home, balanced finances, and stop there, as if the universe were a private vault for accumulating spiritual treasures. But such a vision is a dangerous mutilation, because the divine law is never exhausted in personal benefit. It circulates, expands, and multiplies only when the attained good becomes service, blessing the neighbor, and by increasing radiation the entire world. The ego may appropriate mental techniques to crown its vanity, but by isolating the flow, it coagulates it. In contrast, Christ consciousness understands that every personal achievement is a fiduciary deposit of the kingdom, and the only way to preserve it is to give it away in the form the Spirit dictates. Thus, service is not simple, sentimental philanthropy. It is an organized projection of omnipotent thought into networks of practical love that nurture the collective, raise planetary vibration, and seal divine identity with the unmistakable efficacy of light that, by illuminating, does not diminish its glow. This understanding requires a shift in perspective from the old paradigm, what can I take from the world, to the Christic axiom, what can flow through me into the world. At first glance, this inversion seems like sacrifice. In reality, it is liberation from the subtlest prison, egocentrism, which keeps the mind orbiting in a small circle, repeating problems like a satellite that never leaves its asteroid's shadow. When thought is oriented toward service, the orbit expands, energy renews, and providence entrusts greater resources, confident that a distribution channel will be found. This explains why some individuals, after dedicating their talents to a noble cause, teaching, healing, research, receive subsidies, ideas, and collaborators in abundance far beyond accounting expectations. It is not luck, it is spiritual hydrodynamics. A great current only reaches a conduit that opens into serene plains. Otherwise, the river would choose another course to avoid overflowing and devastation. 4 phases of projecting divine thought. Clear design of service. The mind formulates the specific good it wishes to see materialized beyond its personal orbit. A community library, a food program, a training manual, a fair workplace environment, a symphony that elevates dormant sensitivities. The vision must fulfill 2 requirements: respond to a real need and harmonize with the server's attitude. Law would reject a whimsical plan ignoring context, just as nature frowns on a dolphin climbing a cedar. The student drafts a detailed paragraph describing the completed work, number of beneficiaries, motivating atmosphere, and verifiable results. This description is placed in the secret chamber of the mind, the I am room, and moves to the 2nd phase, mental impregnation. Sustain the service vision using the same technique applied to health or prosperity, but with altruistic intensity, adding a higher vibratory octave. Each morning, for 10 minutes, the practitioner visualizes the work functioning. Children reading with bright eyes, patients receiving medicine, workers using safe tools, music lovers transformed by new harmonies. They breathe gratitude, affirming, "I am an inexhaustible channel of provision and wisdom for this work." The dominant emotion is serene joy, not pride. This mental impregnation imprints not only the image, but also the conviction that resources are already provided. The mind, still tied to the small self, may ask, where will funds and collaborators come from? The answer is immediate. They are coming now in perfect form. The internal matrix is thus prepared to recognize opportunities that previously went unnoticed. Ordered action translates invisible energy into tangible steps. Here, the server consults intuition and acts with the discipline of an architect following an approved plan. They may start humbly, donate a personal book, visit a hospital, convene a first meeting, but execute with excellence, knowing each brick vibrates with temple quality. Initial responses may be lukewarm. Perseverance, recording progress, and gratitude are essential. Obstacles, bureaucratic rejection, temporary scarcity, are not seen as defeat, but reinterpreted. This stone reveals a necessary adjustment and propels me to refine the plan. Law supports a flexible mind, resists a stubborn mind. Sustained expansion. Once the first manifestation appears, a small reading room, a free therapy group, a well-received musical rehearsal, the project grows without losing essence. Impregnation is repeated, additional channels are added, substitutes are trained to prevent dependence on individuals. The server avoids controlling every thread. Delegates, trusts, supervises with love, not possessive zeal, recognizing the work belongs to Christ consciousness, not the ego. Soon, replication occurs. Another library, clinic, youth orchestra. A lay observer may call it a franchise. Spiritual science calls it the principle of infinite replication, the mental equivalent of healthy cellular growth. Avoiding pitfalls. Civility, confusing service with unwise self-abnegation, overexertion, or tolerating abuse. Wise love maintains self-respect, teaching by example that serving is reflecting the principle's authority through order and efficiency, not enduring exploitation. Vainglory, when results, applause, or recognition deceive the ego into believing it is the source of miracles. The antidote? Daily reminder, I am the channel, not the source. Gratitude and credit go to spirit. preventing energy leakage that could later manifest as corrective failures. Silent radiance. Projecting divine thought is not limited to formal works. It includes silent irradiation by a compassionate heart, walking down an avenue blessing strangers, wishing peace on a tram, affirming divine justice in a courthouse. Transform stores, classrooms, and courts into momentary temples where, without ritual or publicity, a higher frequency establishes. I have witnessed irritable cues become courteous when two practitioners in mutual agreement visualize the crowd within an oval of green light, repeating inwardly, "Love and patience prevail." The law of radiation requires no external verification. Coherence of effects confirms that subtle currents manifest in observable behavior. Economy of good. Service inaugurates an economy of constructive thought. The more it is shared, the greater the capacity to share. The intellect expands, the heart beats joyfully, material resources adjust as shadows to the body, and the divine mind safeguards its own purpose. The world in need of hope finds in each server a beacon of light that contradicts headlines of despair. Practical exercise. Choose a field where your talent intersects real need. Draft a vibrant description. Imprint it in your mind morning and night. Act today with small but firm steps. Maintain the habit for 40 days. Observe, adjust, multiply. Do not wait for title, funds, or universal consent. Projected divine thought precedes visible sponsorship. God signs the checks in faith. The world endorses them when presented with humble conviction. Closing affirmation. Universal Father, source of all good, we consecrate our mind, hands, and voice to the work of blessing. We offer ourselves as conscious channels of your wisdom, peace, and abundance, so that every creature touched by our thought feels relief, and every corner reached by our deeds shines. Guide our plans, provide the means, and preserve the purity of our purpose, so that the service performed mirrors faithfully your eternal vision. So it is given, so it remains. Amen.